Hi, I'm Willie Myette. I'd like to welcome you to the jazzpianolessons.com e-lessons. I just briefly want to go through what it is that I'm going to be doing in these e-lessons and what it is that you're going to be learning. First of all, I'm going to try and go through some preliminary basic music stuff in these 20 e-lessons so that before you get into the site and before you subscribe, or even while you are subscribing, each week you can get some basic music concepts. However, what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to treat you like an idiot and go over and over. This is a G clef and that note is this and that and the other thing. Because there are so many resources available online like Wikipedia and different sites online in which you can get all this information listed out for free. So I'm not going to reinvent the wheel for you. However, in one of the e-lessons, what I will do is I will show you where to find some of this information and also how to search for some of this information using Google and other search places so that when you have a question and you're trying to get it answered, I'll give you some tips on how you can search for it. Right, so let's get started with the E-lesson. In this first lesson, what I'm going to be focusing on is just basic triads and seventh chords. Okay, so now a triad is a three-note chord. So if you take a look here, we have a C triad. We have C, E, and G. Now let's first of all start with how we can get that basic triad. And what we do is we start with a major five-finger scale. Okay, now before I go on with there, let me explain that there are 12 keys of music, 12 major keys and 12 minor keys. Okay, so you could be playing in major or you could be playing in minor as well. Right? Now, when you listen to a piece of music, whatever it is, if it's Beethoven or if it's Green Day, they're going to be playing in one of these keys, either a major key or a minor key. There is some modal stuff, but even modal stuff is based off of major and minor keys. Okay, so think 12 major keys, 12 minor keys. Let's just focus on the major keys for right now. Okay, if you look at the piano, you have C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, right, so on and so forth. These are the 12 keys, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And obviously, it repeats again. So these are the 12 different keys that you can be in. If we're in the key of C, if we're in the key of F, key of E flat. So let me explain how to make this five-finger scale, okay? What you do is you start on whatever key you're going to be in or whatever note you're trying to make the scale on. So in other words, say I want to make a scale in the key of C. Okay, well, I'm going to start on C, and then I go up a whole step, and a whole step is 2 half steps. That's a half step. When you go to the very next note, if there's no note in between, that's a half step. So these are half steps. A whole step is when you put two of them together. A whole step up from here would be that. Whole step from here, okay? You see that whole steps have one note in between. Okay, so back to the five-finger scale here. Start on the note, the key note, right, C, go up a whole step, go up another whole step, go up a half step, and then finally go up a whole step. Now what you'll notice is that that pattern is the same in all keys. And this is some stuff that you're going to notice as you learn more about music is that there's so many similarities between different things. And then one thing I like to tell students is if you have a globe and you look at it just one way, if the sun was shining on the earth, you see it shining only on one part of it at a time, right? To get a full picture of the earth or of a globe or of music in general, right, the topic that we're talking about, what you want to do is you want to look at it from all different aspects. You want to shine that light on it all different ways. Okay, so that means that every time you look at something like, what's another way of thinking about this? Oh, what's another way of thinking about this? And then when you do that more and more, what you'll notice is that you're going to really understand the concepts much, much better. So anyway, if we were to go into like the key of D, here's D, go up a whole step, go up a whole step, half step, whole step. And we always, for the five-finger scale, we just use this fingering. Starts with the pinky in the left hand, thumb with the right hand, goes up each finger. Whoops. For you to do the key of F, whole step, half step, whole step. Key of, let's do the key of B. The trick is, remember to start on a note right? Then you go a whole step. Just by playing a note, you haven't done anything. You haven't done a whole step or a half step, and that sometimes confuses people. So start on a note, go up a whole step. That's the first whole step. Next whole step, now a half step, and finally a whole step. The other thing that confuses people is make sure you bring your fingers deep into the key bed here. Don't play like this, and then like have to do this kind of stuff. Bring your finger deeper into the key bed like this. Okay, so that's how to make a 5-finger scale. You can do that on any key. All right, that was an A flat right there. So that's 5-finger major. To make it minor, all you do is you flat the third note. Okay, actually I got a little bit ahead of myself. What we should do is number the notes. Okay, so number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the number of the notes, not of your fingers. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So then if you play 1, 3, and 5 together at the same time, you just made a major triad. Okay, so now if you flat the third, that's minor. Remember, I'm moving my fingers right now just so you can see what notes I'm playing. So, C major, C minor. Okay, now there's 2 more chords that we need to learn. It's diminished. To make diminished, you can start at major, flat the third, and flat the fifth. That's your diminished chord, all right? Once again, the fingers you should use is pinky, middle, and thumb. All right, but right now I'm just going to move my fingers just so you can see it a little bit easier. And then the last chord is augmented. And you make augmented, start at the major, and sharp the fifth. Okay? All right, so notice how I always go back to the major and then I do what it is I need to do. You don't want to do this. This is not an augmented chord. It's not the major, then sharp the 5. You want to get to this, all right? That's your end goal. So going to the major chord first is just a little step along the way just to help you out. So think major and then, okay, sharp the 5. Boom, there's augmented. So these chord symbols, a lot of times if you just see a letter above the melody, so if it says F or G or B flat, that means you just play a major triad. If you saw a minus sign, then you play minor. Or if you saw M-I-N, all right, or a little m, that's minor. If you saw a little circle, right, so C with a circle, that means diminished. Sometimes they'll write D-I-M, all right, and that's where you flat the third and the fifth. And if you see a plus or you see like a sharp 5, that's augmented. Sometimes you'll even see A-U-G. In the back of the Jazz Kids book 4, there's a whole chord chart that lists all of those different chord symbols and different ways of making them. Okay, so that's triads. Let's just do a couple. Let's do G minor. So start with our G 5-finger scale, play major. We know minor is you flat the third, so that's minor. G minor is G, B flat, D. Okay, let's try E flat augmented. So start on E flat. All right, let's do the 5-finger scale. Go up a whole step, another whole step, half step, whole step. Now, if your fingers kind of get stuck in here, like, my fingers are kind of big, so they'll get stuck in here. Don't worry about it, right? Just do your best. You're not always going to be playing that fingering, but that's the best fingering to start with for right now, right? So, major, right? And then there's minor, but we want it augmented. So we do major, and we sharp the fifth. Another fingering that is common used in triads is 1, 2, and 4. Okay? And if you want another way of practicing your triads, just play the root down in the left hand. You can do it in octaves. So you see, all I'm doing there is going through the different triads, just bum, 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 right? But it actually has kind of a cool sound to it. So that's another idea that you can do to get, just some fun sounds. You can also break them up and arpeggiate them. And arpeggiating just means that you break them up, all right? So that's an arpeggio. So listen to this. So I went from the major to the augmented, back to the major, and then the diminished. And you can hear how it almost sounds like a song, right? And all I'm doing is just breaking up the triad. Okay, so that's triads. That's a basic rundown of triads. Hi, I'm Willie Myette, and I'd like to welcome you to e-lesson number 2 here for jazzpianolessons.com. In this e-lesson, what I'm going to talk about is how you should approach the piano, and what I mean by that is how you should sit at the piano, the right way to play, and go through some of the wrong ways as well, okay? Because sometimes, if you're learning on DVD or if you're learning online, if you don't have a teacher there to be able to tell you, no, that's right, that's wrong, you might get a little bit confused. So I want to make sure that you understand the proper way of playing so you don't hurt yourself. Because it is possible to hurt yourself if you play wrong, all right? If your hands are like all stiff and your back is all tweaked the wrong way, over time you can hurt yourself and get those nasty things like carpal tunnel and all that kind of stuff. So let's talk a little bit today about the right way to avoid all of that nastiness. Okay? So the first thing is how you should sit at the piano. Okay? Now, if you notice, you may or may not be able to see, but the bench is pretty far back. Okay? And a good rule of thumb is if I look down, okay, between my legs, I shouldn't see a bunch of bench right there. So if I'm sitting way back here and I see a bunch of bench right between my legs, then I could probably move the bench back. I don't need that much bench. Really, all I need is for my bottom to be on the bench. And really, if you put your hand underneath your bottom, right, and then you move your bottom around there, you'll feel your sit bones. Okay, your sit bones are all that you need on the bench. Okay, so really, the bench could be that wide, all right, and then you'd be totally fine. Of course, it wouldn't be all that comfortable. Okay, but that's all that you really need to be able to sit at the piano. Okay, not much bench. Now, a good way of getting a nice distance is make a fist, right, and put the fist right at the edge of the keys, right, and then with your elbow, just put it right into your side. Okay, so then there we go. So if I was sitting like this, if I was sitting way in, see, I couldn't get my elbow into my side, right? Because the fist would be, far too back on the keys. So I move back so it's about here, all right? And what that gives me is when I relax my arm and I put my hand up here, my fingers are just like right on the keys here, all right? But yet, you see where my elbow is? See how my arm is not doing this? It's not straight back, okay? Or it's not back like that. It's a little bit out in front, okay? So if you think about it, here's your back, right? And when you have your arm come down, it should be out just a little bit like that, okay? So it shouldn't be perfectly aligned with your back. So here, okay, yeah, this feels right. Okay? So my elbows are free to be able to move around. So here I can see how I can move my elbows. I can keep this whole mechanism nice and loose. Now, also notice my back. I'm not doing this. I'm not sitting back like that, right? And I'm also not hunching over like this. A lot of times you'll see sometimes videos of famous pianists. They'll be doing all this weird, crazy stuff, and you think, well, wait a second, Willie. Well, what the heck are you talking about? Bill Evans used to hunch over all the time. Keith Jarrett actually stands up at the piano while he's playing, and they play fantastic. It's true. They do that, and they did do that. But the difference is they also know how to sit at the piano the right way, and they practiced getting centered, and now they can move out from there, and then they can, when they play, and then also when I play, I'll move around and stuff, but I know how to sit at the piano and get myself centered. So if I start to get tired or something, okay, boom, I can sit back down, and I can, just get back to where I'm supposed to be and give my body a rest. Okay? So you want to make sure you know how to get back to this centered position, all right, where you can be relaxed. So talking about the back again, the back should be, you shouldn't be stiff. You should just be sitting up nice and tall. So imagine like there's a string coming from the top of your head and it's just kind of pulling you up, okay? So here we go. Now, notice my neck. I want to be careful that I don't do this with my neck, okay? See if I do this? See what happens when I do that? All right, I'm going to create all this tension in the back of my neck. And if you play the piano and afterwards you feel like, oh man, my neck is so sore. Well, that could be a couple of things. One, it could be that you're not used to sitting up, right? Now, that's one thing I should tell you. If you're not used to sitting up and you start sitting up right, well, you're probably going to be a little bit sore because you're using muscles that you're not accustomed to using. But after a couple of days, that should all go away, all right? But if you notice that your neck is sore, you might be doing this. All right? You might be doing this thing where you're like kind of moving your neck down and holding a lot of tension in your neck. There's a great picture of Rubinstein that I saw in which he was sitting at the piano and his eyes were just glancing down. So his body was like this. It was all nice and upright. It was nice and perfect. But he was just looking down with his eyes. And that's really all you need. Now, obviously, you're going to look down a little bit, right? But you want to make sure that you're not doing this, all right? Because you can, if you do it, you can feel the tension in your shoulders. All right, now that brings us to the shoulders. It's funny when you see sometimes some illustrations of jazz piano players, you'll see like this. They're like all like doing this like, you know, shoulder up thing. And you know, if you look at jazz piano player clip art and stuff, you'll see like these, you know, weird looking, you know, players. That's not the way you want to play. Not at all. I mean, doing this is going to be really bad for you, okay? Now, one way to avoid it, I'm sure you've probably heard of this before, is, you know, do this thing where you bring your shoulders up, right? Hold it there for a few seconds, and then just drop them and relax, okay? Your shoulders should be just dropped by the sides, you know, nice and relaxed, okay? It's just almost like if someone was behind you, just helping you to just pull your shoulders down a little bit, all right? It should be nice and relaxed. Okay? So that you shouldn't have to be playing like this. That's not good. You should be nice and relaxed when you play. And then notice the height of my bench. This bench is a little bit high for me, but it's not too bad. It works well for, you know, for myself and most of my students. You want to make sure that your arm is not too high or too low. Okay? This is the main thing. It's the wrist. Right? You want to be really careful for your wrist. And let me give you a good rule of thumb here. If you put your arm down by your side and you just pick up your arm to your side, right? You'll notice that, you know, your wrist is just basically, you know, nice and straight. And notice your fingers as well. They're just curled, okay? This is the position in which your arm wants to be, and your arm, your hand, your wrist most of the time. Just relax by your side. Okay? So look at that, and you want to keep that same position when you come up and play. Now, obviously, don't make it tight, you know, to do this. Okay? So when you come and play, your wrist should be, you know, just a little bit of a curve, right? And then should be a curve to your fingers. You know, some people like to say, imagine that there's a ball or something in your hand, and that's where you're like kind of curling right around that ball. And now, playing-wise, there's many different approaches to playing. You want to avoid pushing, right? It's not a pushing, you know? You hear that sound, or like, you know, the other thing is like playing chords where people will be pushing. I like this approach of grabbing, in which you're like grabbing at the keys. You grab and you stick, all right? So it's like you grab and stick. See that? So you don't grab and keep going. You grab at the key and then you stop there, right? See how I'm grabbing? But now, obviously, that technique is not going to work all the time because, you know, depending on how fast you're playing or whatnot, you might not be able to grab all the time. So the best thing for your technique is to just stay relaxed and really think about what it is, how your body is feeling and what it is that you're playing. Like, take visual cues. Look at your arms, you know, like if you see your arm like this and you're like doing this thing like, oh, wow, that looks kind of weird. And, you know, and then, wow, yeah, it feels kind of tense over here. Well, yeah, it probably is weird and it probably isn't good. So something like this works a lot better. See how my hand doesn't look tense anymore? Okay? So use your body's cues. Your body will let you know if it's feeling, tense or tired. So listen to those cues, okay? And then also use your eyes. Take a look at, how you're playing, and look at your arms and stuff. Now, as far as your back and your shoulders, your neck and your head and all that kind of stuff, do what I'm doing right now. If you can, videotape yourself or borrow a video camera. They're really cheap now too, and it's a great investment for you to see how it is that how you're playing. Okay, so or have somebody watch you and ask them to ask you some of these specific questions. How's my neck look? Am I arching my neck like that? Does my back look pretty straight? Do I look like I'm holding tension? If so, where am I holding tension? Now, there's obviously a certain amount of tension that you're going to need in order to play the instrument, otherwise it's just going to collapse, okay? There's a certain amount of tension just in sitting, okay? But you don't want to add any more tension than need be, okay? As you get better as a player, you might end up sitting for hours at your instrument and having to play, and then maybe even playing stuff that's really intense and stuff, and you're going to move your fingers around and your body's moving, okay? So you want to stay as relaxed as possible. Now, let me just give you a couple of places that you can go. The first is Alexander technique. Frederick Matthias Alexander, I believe that was his full name. But the Alexander technique is a great way just to kind of, stay aware of your body and make sure that you're, holding your body right. You can also do yoga as well, or look into yoga. Okay, that's another nice thing. Stretching exercises are good. Something that you could stretch your wrist and that kind of stuff, and just wide range of motion stretching. The thing that I find also that helps me is going to the gym. Doing some exercising and even some running and stuff. That exercising is really good because it helps keep my body loose, but also helps to strengthen the muscles that I need strengthened. So. Main thing is, if you have any pain, right, like serious pain, and it's going for a long time, here's my disclaimer: make sure you check with your physician, okay? Because you don't want to get carpal tunnel or tendonitis and stuff like that. It's not a bad idea just to even read up on the internet on some of that stuff, just so that you get a basic idea of what it is. And I'll try and put some links in the e-lesson so that you can click on them and find out some more information. So. Good luck. Now let's go through the 3 basic types of 7th chords. And I say basic types of 7th chords because there's a lot of different types of 7th chords. We're going to do 3 that you definitely have to make sure that you know. And they are major 7, minor 7, and dominant 7th. Now, there's 2 ways of thinking about making I'm sure there's many, but there's two common ways of thinking about making a 7th chord. The first way is to, once again, do the whole scale, number the notes, 1, 3, 5, 7, right, for major, 1, flat 3, 5, flat 7 for minor, and 1, 3, 5, flat 7 for dominant. So you could take that pattern and do it on any of your major scales. So if you know your major scales, a major 7th chord is 1, 3, 5, 7, minor is 1, flat 3, 5, flat 7, and dominant is 1, 3, 5, flat 7. But if you're not all that hip onto your major scales yet, let me show you another little trick. And that is, and once again, this is not the right fingering, it's just so you could see it. What you do is you start with your major triad. Okay, so here's my C major triad, right? And go to the root up top, and the root up top is this is the root down here, right? So that's your root, your 3rd, your 5th. So remember when we numbered it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 3, and 5, right? So here's your root, same thing as 1. You just play it up an octave, okay? So it's just basically a C triad with the root doubled, okay? So you play it up an octave, and for major 7th chords, you go down a half step from that note. For dominant 7th chords, go down a whole step from the root. And for minor 7 chords, still keep the 7th down a whole step, but also add in the flat 3rd there. Okay? Except we're going to do that all with one hand. So if I do it with my left hand, so here's C major 7, once again, major triad, and the 7th is down a half step from the root. So only the major 7 chord has the 7th down a half step from the root. okay? And then to do dominant 7th, still my major triad, but the 7th is down now a whole step from the root, see? All right, and it's C, E, G, B flat. And then to make it minor, flat the 3rd. And that's C minor 7th chord. So let's do that for a couple of them. Now notice the fingers I'm using. I'm not using my ring finger, okay? Now some people find it easier to use your ring finger and not use the middle finger. That's fine. Whatever you find comfortable, go with that, okay? But don't do like something like that, you know, where you're like really stretching. Always look at your hand. If your hand looks tense, or if you feel tense, then you're probably doing something wrong, right? You should be able to play with the least amount of tension as possible. And I'll go through that in another E lesson so that you can understand the right way to sit at the piano and stuff. Okay, so here we have the 7ths. Let's try a couple of other ones. Let's do F major 7. So start with my F major triad, my root up top, and I know the 7th is down a half step. That's F major 7. And now listen to the nice sounds you can get if you just play the root down here. Go to dominant, minor, I'm playing down here is just the F again, just down an octave, okay? I can do it up here. And now, once again, what am I doing here? I'm breaking up that chord. What do I call that? I call it an arpeggio, okay? Arpeggio. So, major, right? And then go to dominant. Minor now. So you can get some really cool sounds there. All right, let's try some other chords. How about G7? So here I have my major triad, G, B, and D. G7, right? It's a dominant 7th chord. So I go down a whole step, and there's G7. That's G minor 7, right? That's G major 7, right? Down a half step, okay? And once again, you play these all with one hand, right? But I'm just doing this so you can see it. So now, if I play C7, F7, and G7, well, guess what? There's my blues. Okay? So now, I'll show you a quick little bass line you can do with that. All right? If you can't get this right away, don't worry about it. We'll end up going through it again later on, okay? But so you see, adding that chord, the 7th chord to the right hand, sounds really cool, all right? And then you can throw a little bass line down there, or even just do. And even there, all I'm doing is just playing the root back and forth, okay? That's a pretty simple way of coming up with something in the left hand, okay? So make sure that you go through all of these different 7th chords and understand how to play each of them, all right? So there's 4 different triads. You have a major triad, minor triad, diminished triad, and augmented. You know how to start with the major triad, so play your major scale, your major 5-finger scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Start on a note, whole step, half step, whole step, and then get 1, 3, and 5. That's your major. To make it minor, flat the 3rd, so it's 1, flat 3, 5. To make it diminished, it's flat the 3rd and flat the 5th, so it's 1, flat 3, flat 5. And to make it augmented, you sharp the 5th. 1, 3, sharp 5. And then you have 3 basic types of 7th chords that you're going to want to make sure you know. And they're major 7, dominant 7th, and minor 7. Major 7 is a major triad, and then you go down a half step from the root up top, and there's your 7th. Dominant 7th is the same thing as the major triad, right? But the 7th is down a whole step from the root. And then finally, you have your minor 7 chord, which is your minor triad, and then it's down a whole step from the root, right? So make sure you go through all those chords, you know, do your arpeggios. You can, okay? That's one way of practicing them, just playing them straight, you know, going, going through, going up by half steps, going up by whole steps, go around the circle of fifths. All right, and make sure you really understand them very well. And then you can also make some note cards for yourself, and just put C major 7 and think, okay, boom, quiz yourself. What notes are in the C major 7 chord? Okay, C, E, G, B. All right, because you need to make sure that you can go between them very quickly. Okay, we'll talk about it more as we go on. So, hey, thanks for joining me for this e-lesson. And if you'd like more information about what it is that I do, please feel free to check out jazzpianolessons.com, where you can subscribe to the lessons online, or you can order a DVD of these lessons and have it shipped to you. Thanks again. Hi, I'm Willie Myette, and I'd like to welcome you to this e-lesson. Today's lesson is on triad inversions. Okay, so when you think of a triad, like let's take a C major triad. We have C, E, and G, right? Okay. So now the triad is the notes C, E, and G. It doesn't have to be played like this all the time. So if I have C, E, G, I can move them around. Okay. So kind of like, you know how like they have that game where, the card sharks or whatever, they'll throw the cards over and the 3 cards and they'll move them around, right? Okay, it's the same kind of thing. Like I could take those notes and I can move them any way that I want, any order that I want. Okay, so if I wanted to put that C up here, I could do that. If I want to do an E over here, a C here, and a G, that's fine. If I want to do a G down here, a C right there, and an E right there, that's fine too. It's all a C triad sound. It's just all a C sound, okay? So there is specific terms that we call these different inversions, okay? So this is called C major, and it's root position, okay? Because I'm playing the root on the bottom. If I take the root and I move it up, this is first inversion. And if I take the third and I move it up top, now I have second inversion. And then finally, if I take that, move it up top, now I'm back to root position. Let me go through the fingering because there is a specific fingering and it works for all of them, okay? So any key that you're in. So I'll do the left hand first. Root position, 5, 3, and 1. First inversion, 5, 3, and 1. Second inversion, 5, 2, and 1. And then back to root position. Okay? Sometimes you might even... the black notes here, you might want to do 4, 2, and 1. It might be a little bit easier for you, right? Okay. So in the right hand, root position. This is a D major triad. In fact, let's do minor. There's D minor, root position, 1, 3, 5. First inversion, 1, 2, 5. Second inversion, 1, 3, 5. Root position. So you notice between both hands, the left hand and the right hand, the only inversion that has a different fingering, well actually no, I'm sorry. In the right hand it's the first inversion, and in the left hand it would be the second inversion. So the second inversion in the left hand is the different fingering from just 1, 3, 5, and then the first inversion in the right hand is the different fingering from just 1, 3, and 5. Okay, so let's go through a couple of other triads here just to make sure you really got it. If we do F major, right, root position, here's first inversion, second inversion, back to root position. And obviously, it just keeps going and going and going, okay? Let's do B flat, root position. Notice I'm going to use my fourth finger here. It's a little bit easier on my hands, okay? I could do that as well, pinky, right? There's first inversion, second inversion, and back to root position. Now, the reason that you want to know triads and their inversions is that this way it makes it easy to be able to move in between all of these different chords, okay? So let's say that we want to go, I don't know, like from E flat to C minor to G minor, okay? I just want to do that. So check this out. I could do root position. But now root position all of the time kind of sounds a little bit boring, and it's not the easiest way of moving around. Now watch what I'm going to do, and I'm going to use inversions in the right hand, and in the left hand I'm just going to use the root in the fifth. So that's just moving around all these different triads using these different inversions. There's an E lesson on slash chords, okay? And now I'll explain to you different ways of writing these triads, because if this is all a C triad, well, how do you write this versus that, okay? And then I'll explain that to you, but just very quickly, that's C, and this we call C slash G, all right? So it's a C triad with G in the bass. So make sure that you can go through all of your different inversions of your triads, do majors, minors. That's a nice progression. You know, if you want to do it in the key of C, it'd be C to A minor, right? And then to E minor. You go to G as well. Have fun. Hi, I'm Willie Myette, and I'd like to welcome you to this E-lesson. This E-lesson is on slash chords and polychords. So let's get right into what a slash chord is. You know that we have a C triad, right? This is what the C triad looks like. C, E, and G, okay? Now, if you see something like this, right? C slash G, like that, that is what we call a slash chord, right? And we pronounce it C over G. So really all it means is it's a C triad, but we take the G, we can bring it down, right? We put the G as the bottom note. You have to remember that the notes of the triad are just C, E, and G, so you can put them in any order that you want. So here we have G, C, and E, okay? So that's C over G. We can do the same thing with the next one. D slash F sharp, that's D over F sharp. So we know it's a D major triad, and then we got to put F sharp as the bottom note, so the easiest way is to just bring D up here, and there we go. That's D over F sharp. And this is how we can write out inversions. If we know that we want something like that, that's D over F sharp to G. C over G, to G, D over F sharp to G. So the letter to the left, so in this case F slash C, the letter to the left is the chord, all right? So it's an F chord, and then the letter to the right is what note should be in the bass. So this says F over C. So one way we can also play it is just to play any one of our F inversions, right? Any one of these, but just make sure we play a C in the left hand. These are all going to be F over C because the ear is going to keep hearing that C in the left hand. Sorry about that. Okay? So when you see that chord symbol like that, a slash like that, if you're playing chords in both hands, like if you're accompanying a saxophone, trumpet, or a singer or whatnot, right? If you're going to play F over C, it can be any of those as long as that left hand is playing the C. If you're going to play just one hand, just chords in the right hand and melody in the right hand, then F over C would be this. It's an F triad with a C in the left hand. All right, so now let's go through some that don't have the bass note as part of the chord. In this case, it's D minor over G. Well, in a D minor triad, there's no G. So there's a couple ways in which you can do it. One is get your D minor chord, right, and then find the one that has the bottom note closest to G, right, and do something like that, or do that. So say that you had D minor over A to D minor over G to D minor over F. Okay? So basically all you're doing is you're just replacing the closest chord neighbor. C/A. This is C over A. So in this case, you can do C over G, right? And then just put an A instead. And you look, it's really just an A minor triad. But let's say that you had, you were playing A in the left hand. This is where you can kind of hear it a little bit better. The last one here is G minor over C. Well, in that case, it's just a G minor chord with C in the bass. And really what it ends up making is a C7 chord, a C7 sound. Right? And then finally we have these. These are called polychords because it's actually two chords stacked on top of one another. So in this case it's a D triad in the right hand with an E minor triad in the left hand. And this gets a great sound. Right? This gets a nice minor E minor 7 with a 9 and 11. Okay? So that's a stacked chord like that. You can do D minor with C in the right hand. Remember, I'm just moving my fingers so you could see them, right? Normally you keep your fingers over. And then this one is very popular. F over G, like this F polychord, right? F in the right hand with G in the left hand. Okay? What this is this is a sus sound, okay? With that suspended. Now another way that you'll see this kind of stuff, well, you won't be able to see it if I write it, but if you do F over G, like that, that gets that sus sound. And in this case, this is a polychord sound, but it's going to sound a little bit tense with that third there. So you can take the third out, right? Okay? So, slash chords, polychords. Slash chord, that means that you play just that note in the bass, right? Polychord means that these are two different chords stacked on top of one another. Okay? Another good one is that. Or you can play like a C7 with D in the right hand. So these are all different types of polychords, and we'll talk about that more. Okay? Thanks. Hi, welcome to the e-lesson on chord shells. Okay, now prior to this e-lesson, I explained how to play seventh chords. Right, so there's C major 7, C minor 7, C dominant 7th, okay? Now, all a chord shell is when we take the root in the 3rd or the root in the 7th and play just those two notes, okay? So let me explain. So if I'm going to play major 7, C major 7, it would be just C and B. Or I could play C and E. Right? So now this would be best explained if I go through a progression. So let me do C major 7 to A7 to D minor 7 to G7. Right? So here I have C major 7, right? And I'm going to put the pedal down, right? And then I go to A7, right? Now here I could go up to D minor 7, right? Root and 7, but notice how going to just the root and 3rd is a nice transition. It's good voice leading, all right? And voice leading is just how we move between the different voices of the chord, and the voices of the chord are each note of the chord. It's kind of like a choir thing, if you were to think, or a chorus thing, if you were to think soprano, alto, tenor, bass, okay? It's your 4-part harmony, right? So C major 7, A7, D minor 7, and then now look, there's my 7 for G7. So there's a couple of really cool things that these chord shells do for you. The first is that it's a lot easier to move, between these different chords without having to do that kind of stuff. You can move between them very, very fast. Beboppers like Thelonious Monk and Bud Powell. And even today, have used chord shells and continue to use chord shells. The other thing that chord shells are good for is that it's easy on the hands, right? Because, you know, it's a lot easier to stretch this, right, and get the pinky and the thumb. And if you have a smaller hand, sometimes getting all four of those notes is kind of tough, all right? And there's a lot of tension there, all right? So this way, you can just play two notes, and it's easier on the hands. It's also a lot easier on the brain, because now you're only thinking about two notes. So when you got to, you know, get to these notes quickly, instead of having to come up with four notes down here, you just play two notes, right? You're just going to think, what's the root in the seventh? Boom, what's the root in the third? The other thing that's great about it is you really have to know what's the seventh, what's the third. So it forces you to really get to know your chords a lot better. And the last thing is it makes improvising a lot easier, because you don't have as many notes to contend with. Okay? Think of it like kind of like, I don't know, if you were playing football, right? And on the opposite team, they had two less players. All right? So now when you have less players, that's less opposition to get to your goal. All right? So and the same thing in here with this. When you have just these two notes, if you play another note here that might not sound good when you have, you know, like that note doesn't sound all that great, but that doesn't sound as tense. Obviously it still sounds tense, but not nearly as tense as that. All right, so now what you could try practicing is go between the C major 7 to A7 to D minor 7 to G7. Just try play your major scale. If you want, just start. Then you can start on C up here. Now, you might be wondering, well, do I always have to start on this? Well, no, you don't have to start on that all the time, okay? You can start down here. That wouldn't make as much sense because it's starting to get a little too low, right? And that's another thing I should mention about shells, is that the good thing is you could play a lot, no, maybe not that one, but that one you could play, definitely. There's an F7 chord shell, but if that whole chord with all four notes, it doesn't sound all that great. But when you just play the two notes, just the shell, it sounds a lot better. So you can play your chords lower without them sounding as muddy. So anyway, if you want to start on the root and third for C instead of the root and seventh, you can do that. Okay. And now in the right hand, once you can play that major scale up and down, then you know you can try doing some other stuff like. So you see how I just kind of skipped up and went down. All right. The other thing I could try doing is just improvise freely, just using that that whole scale. But you know, if you have a problem with that, start with the major 5-finger scale first. So. Thing is, make sure you keep that left hand steady. If you have to, do something that's very simple, like 2 notes in the right hand to every 1 note in the left hand. So like. If that's a little too tense for you, play a C6 rather than a C major 7. So have fun playing around with chord shells, and we'll end up talking about those more as we go along. Okay, and you know, just try that exercise along with your 5-finger scale and have fun with it. Thanks a lot. Hi, welcome to this e-lesson, and what I'm going to be talking about in this e-lesson is using chord shells, okay, and how you can add the melody along with a chord shell in the left hand. What I'm going to be using is I'm going to be using the song Satin Doll by Duke Ellington. I'm using it out of the Hal Leonard Real book, and you can find a link to that book next to this e-lesson. chord shells, I'm going to be using the last 4 measures of Satin Doll, okay? So let's just go through those chords just as basic block chords. You see A minor 7, right? D7, A flat minor 7, D flat 7, C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, A7, okay? Now, this is called a block chord when you have these 4 notes played all at the same time. You can see it's built on thirds. It's stacked thirds. So you see you have from there's a third, third, third. Okay, and you can hear that's kind of blocky sounding, and that's why they call it a block chord. Okay, because it's these stacked thirds, and it sometimes, sounds good to play a block chord, but at other times you want to have a chord sound that's a little bit more open, all right? And you want to be able to move those chord tones between the 2 hands, okay? So you don't want to just have like 4 notes down here and then 1 note in the right hand over here, okay? Because you see all this space in between. You want to spread it out, okay? And that's what it is that we're going to be doing with chord shells. Now let's talk about some different types of chord shells on this A minor 7 chord. The first chord shell is we could play just the root and the 7th. And just to review, once again, this is root, 3rd, 5th, 7th. Okay. Now we could play just the root and the 7th of the chord, and now we would call that an R7. All right. We could play just the root and the 5th. That'd be an R5. Or we could play just the root and the 3rd, and that'd be an R3, okay? R being the root. So root 3rd, root 5th, root 7th. For right now, let's focus on the root 7th for A minor 7. And now, if I just go ahead and play this with the root 7s here, I get this. Okay? Now you can hear I get a basic sound. However, it doesn't sound all that bad. If you were to hear someone playing that, you might not think that it's as easy and simplified as it really is. But we want to get it a little bit beefier, okay? And we're going to be doing that in this lesson and then also the next E lesson. So when we go to D7, there's an easier way rather than having to move all the way up to D7 like that. And what we could do is notice how close we are to the root and the 3rd. We could just move this note, this finger, the thumb, down to the 3rd, and then play the root with our 2nd finger. So you see for D7, I'm playing a root 3rd here. Okay? So A minor 7, root 7, then D7, root 3rd. Now you might be wondering, well, how do I know when to switch between a root 7 chord and a root 3 chord? All right, well, let's say that we're going to go from G7 to C major 7, okay? And we're going to start on a root 3 for G7. Now you'll notice that from G to C is down a 5th, up a 4th, however you want to think about it, okay? But when you have that interval of moving by a 4th or 5th, okay, that's when you want to think, this is a good time for me to switch from a root 7 to, from a root 3 to a root 7. Now let's say you're going to go from A minor 7 to B minor 7. It's not going to make sense for you to go from A minor 7 to B minor 7 like that. Okay, I mean, you can even hear that it's not a great transition. When you're just moving by a step, or you're moving even by like a 3rd, say you're going to go from A minor 7 to C major 7, you might want to just stick on whatever voicing you're on. So if you're on a root 7, then stay on root 7. If you're on root 3, then stay on root 3. Okay, so anyway, continuing on, so you see I could use my middle finger here or my 2nd finger. A lot of times I'll switch off between the 2, but I would suggest that you try using your 2nd. It's you might find it a little bit easier, and I'll tell you why. You see how your fingers are all ready to go down to that next A flat there, all right? Whereas if you use your middle finger, you got to stretch a little bit more. So your 2nd finger is a little bit easier on the hands. And now to go to A flat minor 7, well, there you go. There's your root 7. Now, let's quickly talk about the different types, the 3 basic types of 7th chords. You have major 7 chords, minor 7 chords, and dominant 7th chords. Major 7 chords, to find the 7th, you just go down a half step. So this would be A major. All right? And then minor and dominant 7th chords are a whole step down from the root. All right? Now, as far as root 3 goes, major and dominant have a major third. Okay, so you could think of it as 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, don't count the note you're starting on, just go up 4 half steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's your major third. And then minor 7 chords have a minor third. Okay, so you flat the third. So A flat 7, right? And then we're going to go to D flat 7. Remember, it's a major third because it's a dominant 7th chord. There we go. Now we can go right down to C major 7, right? D minor 7, E minor 7, A7. So let me go ahead and do all of those chords along with the right hand melody. Here, it's a nice sound, right? And then when you move in between those different voicings, a root 7 or a root 3, all right, you're going to hear that you're getting this nice voice leading. And all voice leading means is like, you know, how the voices are moving. So this is your bass voice. This is more of a treble, tenor kind of voice. And then see how one's moving down, one's moving up. So you're getting this nice motion, contrary motion between the voices. Whereas when you do this, you're getting parallel motion. They're all moving up or moving down in a specific interval. Okay, so try playing the last 4 measures there of Satin Doll. It's also on the DVD 201, Basics of Improvisation. I do a Satin Doll remake. It's called The Doll is Like Satin. You know, so you can use these techniques on that as well. So have fun. In this E lesson, what I'm going to do is I'm still going to use the last 4 measures of Satin Doll, okay? And I'm going to now add the 3rd, okay, or 7th in the right hand along with the melody. So basically in the E lesson before this, I was just doing shells in the left hand. So I was just doing the root in the 7th or the root in the 3rd, right? Okay. And I was just doing the melody in the right hand. So 2 notes in the left hand, 1 note in the right hand. In this E lesson, we're going to focus on trying to add 1 more note into the mix there. So let me just play it for you here. So it'd be... Okay. So that's what we're going to work on. Now, let's just break this down piece by piece. Before I did, right, I did this. Right? Okay. Now you notice what I'm doing here is I actually ended up going up to the root 7, okay, and I kept the root 7 the same. We can do that, all right, and that sounds perfectly fine. Even though, yes, it is parallel motion like that, the right hand voice adds in some of that contrary motion, so it doesn't sound so bad. But you know what? What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to mix it up a bit here for you, and I'm going to do a root 3 here on the A minor 7, and then go to root 7 on the D7. So see how I did that? Now, let me explain. So before I was doing root 7 to root 3, right? Now all I'm doing is root 3 on the A minor to root 7. Root 3 on the A flat minor to root 7 on D flat 7, and then C major 7. Now the reason I did that is so that I don't have as much of a span in between here. Now, I can reach a pretty far on the piano here, and if you're only able to reach an octave, maybe even a ninth, doing the root 7 down here would be a stretch because you'd have to do something like this. See that? That's a stretch. So I'm not going to do that to you. I'm going to have you move up here, and then so play the root 3 over here for A minor, then root 7, root 3, root 7, and then root 7. Now, if I'm doing root 3 over here with the thumb of my right hand, that's where I throw in my 7th. And now notice that the chords are 2 chords per measure, all right? And when you see 2 chords per measure, you're usually going to play the chords on beat 1 and on beat 3, okay? So in this case, you notice that the melody starts on, it's on the upbeat of beat 1, okay? So we're going to play the chord on beat 1, right? Hold down the chord and then play the melody. Now let me move my my fingers so you can see what I'm doing here. I'm playing D, C, F sharp, and then C up here, okay? And then C is the melody, right? And it's on beat 3. And then once again, let me do root 3 and then 7, right? And then the melody, B flat, and then here I go to D flat 7, root 7, 3rd, right? And then the melody. Okay. Now, when you play, when you have a major 7, a lot of times you can replace it with a major 6, and the 6 is just down a whole step from the 7th. It gives it a little sweeter of a sound. So let me play that for you. Okay, so let's review some of the stuff that we talked about in this E lesson. First of all, you can do root 7 and root 3 down here, okay? Or you could play root 3 and root 7 up here. Notice it's just a flip-flop. So I started on root 7 for A minor, then went to root 3 for D7. But when I move up, I go to root 3 for A minor, and then root 7. Now, why not do root 7 up here? It's just too high, right? And it gets in the way of the right hand. So here I can do root 3, add on the 7th with the thumb in the right hand. Now, if I'm doing root 3 in the left hand, then add the 7th in the right hand. If I'm doing root 7 in the left hand, then I would add the 3rd in the right hand. So have fun with this, and make sure that you really understand how to move in between these different chords, right? Have fun. Now this is an E lesson I think that you're really going to enjoy, because we're going to start getting into some of the meat and potatoes of what makes jazz sound like jazz. Okay, I'm going to be talking about tensions in this E lesson. Now if I take a look at my, let's take my A minor 7 chord here, right? So I have A, C, E, and G. All right, this is my root, 3rd, 5th, and 7th. Now notice that this is stacked thirds. If I keep going with my thirds here, all right, I get what's called upper structures. Okay, so these are my chord tones down here, and if I continue stacking thirds, you see I get these upper structures until finally, well, guess what? I get back to my root. So this is 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, and then back to my root. All right. Now, if you already know about tensions, you might be saying, well, wait a second, that's not exactly 13, right? Because that's 13. This would be flat 13. Let's not worry about that for right now, okay? So you might also think, well, wait a second, that's the same thing as 2. That's the same thing as 4. This would be the same thing as 6 or flat 6. Exactly, all right? They are exactly the same. However, when using them as tensions, you want to call them 9, 11, and 13, okay? Because it's a better vernacular, all right? Imagine like you went to the doctor and the doctor asked the nurse, nurse, can you give me that, that elbow doohickey there, to help fix up the elbow? You might be looking at the doctor thinking that they don't really know what they're doing. So every profession has a vernacular, and this is the vernacular of jazz, okay? So how do you know if it's a tension or if it's a chord tone? Okay, so in other words, how would you know if you're going to call it a 2 or if you're going to call it a 9? It's kind of subjective, but let me give you a little hint, and this is the way I wrap my mind around it. So you have 1, 3, 5, 7, okay? If you're going to replace a chord tone, all right, with, in this case it would be 4, we would call it 4, because notice we replaced the 3 with the 4. And that gives us a suspension. Let's say we had like we'll do it here on C. Okay, here's a C major triad. If I did this, I would call this a C2, right? Or that, a C2, right? Because I'm replacing the 1 with 2. You've heard that sound before, okay? Or this is, in this case, that's a sus4, right? Or in this case, it's a 6, okay? And then what you're doing when you have a 6, a lot of times you're replacing the 7th with the 6th. So just think, if you're replacing a chord tone, then we call it the 2, 4, or 11. If you're adding it on, so here's C major 7, but then you throw that in, you can see you still have your root down here, right? Or the bass player will be playing the root. So this now is the 9th, okay? Whereas this is sharp 11, okay? And that would be 13, all right? Now, there's some gray area in that, but for the most part, that'll give you enough to kind of get you going and be able to wrap your mind around it. Anyway, let's talk about some tensions that work well over certain chords. I like to talk about the 3 basic types of 7th chords, and they are major 7, minor 7, and dominant 7th. Now let's just talk about the 3 tensions, 9, 11, and 13. Okay. On major 7 chords, we can use a 9, we can use a sharp 11, and we can use the 6, right, to replace the 7th. Okay. A lot of times you don't call it a 13, you call it a 6 on a major 7 chord, and it's usually replacing that 7th. That's why you call it 6. Right? So major 7s, 9 and sharp 11. Minor 7s, 9 and 11. Okay? Dominant 7s is where you can throw in your 9, your flat 9, your sharp 9, your sharp 11, your 13, your flat 13. Dominant 7s you can throw in almost everything but the kitchen sink. Okay? The one that you don't normally throw in on a dominant 7th chord is the 11. And the reason for that is it changes the chord. It becomes a sus chord, right? So that's C7 sus4 to C7, okay? So if I take C7 and there's my 9 down there, there's my sharp 11, I could throw in flat 9, flat 13, right? Now that's going to sound a little bit like garbage right now because I'm playing a block chord down here, all right? But as I start to move into shells, it's going to sound really hip. So let's do the last 4 measures here of Satin Doll and put in some of these different tensions. Okay, so we have, from before we had this, right? Okay. So what I can do is, I told you, you can throw in 9, right? So what if we did that? Right? That's kind of a cool sound, right? We can also throw in 11, right? And if you want, you can crush it with your thumb, right? Or play those notes. Check this out. That's a real nice sound right there, throwing in the 11. 11 usually sounds really good on minors. And now here, check this out. Look at what I'm going to do. All right? Now, this is a great sound. Let's analyze this. Here's the root, here's the 7th, here's the 9th, the 3rd. Okay, so let's just take out the root 7, 3, right? And there's your melody, and I added these 2 notes right here, the E and the G sharp. Okay, the E is the 9th, the G sharp is the sharp 11th. Okay, remember what I said, it's dominant 7th chord, so throwing in that sharp 11 and the 9 sounds really good. Okay, all right, so let me do that again. All right, it's a cool sound. I might even be able to get away with doing something like this. See that? There's my sharp 11, and, well, what's this? That's flat 9. Okay. And now, let's go to A flat minor 7. Here I have root 3, 11, flat 7. And now, okay, root 7, this is D flat 7, there's my 3rd, here's my melody, and then here's the 9th. Now let me show you another little trick that you can do. This might start to get a little crowded up here for you. And you know how I was talking about root 7s down here or root 3s down here? Well, you can also play root 3, 7 down there. And if you take a look at arrangements, jazz arrangements, stuff that's been written out so everything is all the notes are written out for you. Take a look at what they're doing on the left hand. I bet you're going to see a lot of root 3 7s, root 7s, root 3s. You're also going to see probably root 5 7. Okay, all right. So it's a very common thing to do. And if I do my 3rd down here, I can take it out up here. So then I end up getting this. Right, you hear how it starts to spread the chord voicing spreads the voicings. It spreads the voices of the chord out. So here we have a third. Here we have a fourth, right? Another like a fourth, third kind of deal. Fourth as well. Okay. All right. So now they're spread out rather than being all bunched up together. And it's a lot of that is what you want to be doing at the piano, spreading out your chords so you get these nice, rich, lush chords. All right, so let me go back from the top. Right, and then A flat minor, and then throw that in there, right, the ninth. And now here, what if I did root 6? I can throw the third in there, and there's my fifth, and then throw in the ninth as well. And if I was going to continue on, here's root 7, 3. I just went up a step, right? Kept that same pattern for the D minor. Add in a 9. And do the same thing for the E minor, right? Now let's look at this chord. This is a real nice chord to get back to the top. All right, this is the root 7 third for A flat 7, and this is what? 13 and flat 9. Okay, so flat 9 with 13, not so bad. I can also throw in my flat 13. Okay. So have fun playing around with that. There's a lot in this E lesson for you to kind of sink your teeth into. Remember the different tensions. 9 and sharp 11 work on major, 9 and 11 on minor, 9, sharp 11, 13, flat 9, sharp 9, flat 13 on dominance. So if you want to learn more about this kind of stuff, I suggest that you take a look at maybe subscribing to the site, and there's a lot more information inside as well. So have fun and good luck. In this E lesson, I'm going to talk about guide tones. All right. Now, up to this point, we've been focusing on playing, root 3s, root 7s in the left hand, okay, but always playing kind of that root. All right. Now, let me explain that there's basically two types of jazz piano playing, okay, and actually, you could say there's two types of piano playing for just about everything except maybe even classical music. And that is when you're playing solo and when you're playing in a group. Okay? When you play solo, obviously it's okay to keep throwing in those roots because you want to hear the root motion. Whereas when you're playing in a group, you're normally going to have a bass player down there playing some kind of a bass line, all right? And then you don't want to double that bass line. You want to play chords over that and then maybe some melody and stuff like that, okay, or improvisation. So that's what we're going to start focusing on for the next couple of lessons here, is how to move away from playing those chords that just have roots and play some of these, what I would call rootless chord voicings without a root. Once again, if you're unfamiliar with the term voicing, all voicing means is how you take the notes of the chords and arrange them. So if there's C7, if you did that, there's one possible voicing for C7. You could also do something like that as well. There's another voicing, okay? And then when you move from one voicing to another, that's called voice leading. So if we go C7 to F7, that's voice leading, all right? And that would be good voice leading using that inversion. Okay, so anyway, talking about guide tones. Guide tones are normally the third and the seventh of any chord. And I say normally because sometimes you might consider the flat 5 on a minor 7 flat 5 chord to be a guide tone. But for right now, we're going to consider just the third and the seventh of the chord to be our guide tones. Now, let's take a look at a couple of different guide tones, right? So let's do, once again, we're going to focus on the blues here. So here we have C7, the first chord in a C blues, right? And the guide tones would be the third and the seventh. Now, when we're going to move to F7, right, the next chord in the blues, here's our F7 chord. The third and the seventh is A and E flat. So let's think about this again here. The third and seventh, the guide tones for C7 is E and B flat, right? E and B flat are the guide tones for C7. The guide tones for F7 are A and E flat. So now if we want to move easily between these two guide tones, we don't have to move up like this. All we need to do is then move by a half step. So here, the E can move down to the E flat, and the B flat can move down to the A. All right? And you'll notice that this is the third, and this is the seventh of C7, and it resolves to the seventh and the third of F7. Okay? Now, this is because of the way that the circle of fifths works, all right? And this is actually coming off of the circle of fourths, which is the circle of fifths going backwards. So C to F to B flat to E flat, A flat, D flat, okay, and so on and so forth. So if we kept going, there's F7. If we wanted to go to B flat 7, here's a 7 and a third, would resolve to the third and the seventh of B flat 7, and so on and so forth, okay? Now, let's keep going. Now, you might think, you might be saying, well, wait a second, I don't hear that as a C7 chord. Well, sure, you might not. So then what you can do is underneath here or cross over, right? You can play your C, right? And I say cross over because I still want you to do this with your left hand, all right? Okay. Now, when you move to F, so now you should practice these with the left hand and then also practice them with the right hand. Okay. Now the last chord is G7. So we were at F7. One way of getting to G7 is just go up 2 half steps, right? So you know if that's F7, that's going to be F sharp 7. That has to be G7, right? And that's always one good way of learning your chords as well. You know if that's C7, you want to go to C sharp 7, well, just move everything up a half step. You want to go to D7, well, you know, and you might have to like really focus on that to make sure that you're playing, you know, those notes correctly, right? Because it's easy to get confused and do something like that. And like, oh, wait a second, that doesn't sound right. Okay, so make sure you're moving everything by a half step. So anyways, F7, right, and then going to G7, there's my seventh and there's my third. So what I would like you to do is go through the blues, okay, and do just your guide tones over the blues. Right? If you're interested in learning more about the blues or some blues play-alongs, that's one thing that's part of the subscribers area and also on the blues DVD. So good luck, have fun, and try quizzing yourself on some different guide tones. One option is make some flashcards for yourself. You know, just make a little index card and put C7, D minor 7, G7, E flat major 7, and go through all the different guide tones. So think to yourself quickly. All right, what A major 7? What's the guide tones? All right, third, seventh, C sharp, G sharp. B flat minor 7, what are the guide tones? D flat, A flat, you know. C7, E, and B flat. Okay, make sure that you can go through and really understand and know what all of those guide tones are. Okay, you're going to notice in some future E lessons, and then also on the DVD, Basics of Improv, I start talking about approaches. And a lot of jazz players use approaches to go in and out of these guide tones and use the guide tones as a way of structuring their improvisation, because the guide tones give you the chord sound. And let me just quickly tell you that. Here you have C7, right? If I were to play just the root and the fifth, is that C7, C minor 7, or C major 7? Well, you don't know because you don't have the third and the seventh. Whereas if I play the third and the seventh, and I say there's a C down here, you know that's C major 7. In this case, you know it's C dominant 7th. In that case, you know it's C minor 7th, right? So the guide tones are what help you to know exactly what the chord harmony is that you're playing. All right? So there's a lot in this lesson too, so go ahead and rewind it and watch it a couple of times and have fun. In this E lesson, I'm going to talk about using rootless chord voicings. All right. Now, I explained to you before that there's basically two types of different jazz piano playing. You know, you have the jazz piano playing where you're going to be playing the root 7 or root 3. You know, you're going to be playing the roots in the left hand along with other chord tones and then doing your melody. But another type of jazz playing, and that's usually solo playing, by the way. But another type of playing is when you're playing with a group, and oftentimes you're not going to want to double the root of the chord because that's what the bass player is going to be doing. So in that situation, when you're playing with a group, a lot of times you'll do guide tones, right, which is just the third and the seventh of the chord. I talked about that in the previous E lesson as well. But notice with guide tones, it's just two notes. It sounds a little bit thin, okay? So let's say that I did. Okay, so I'm going to improvise over the blues here, right? And this is a blues in C. So you can see that this is a C7 chord, right? And I have the 3rd and the 7th here. And I'm just playing that just with my left hand because this is what the bass player would be playing that note. All right. Okay, obviously you're not going to cross over like that. So the 3rd and the 7th of each of the chords, but let's make it a little bit more interesting and add attention to those chords. Now, remember in a few E lessons back, I explained that you can always add the 9th onto a chord. Well, most of the time you can add the 9th onto a chord. So let's do that right now. Let's do C7, and we're going to add on a 9th. And remember, the 9th is just a whole step up from the root. So check that out. That's our C7 chord. And if you listen to that, that's a really cool sound. If I play the root down here, yeah, that's a great sound. Now, when I go to my F7 chord, right, now I could throw the 9th in there, and where is it? Right here, but it's still kind of like cluttered in this area. Now, what if I were to put it up here? Well, yeah, sure, that sounds great, but you know, I don't even know if I could. Oh, I could just barely reach that. Okay, that's a long stretch. You probably won't be able to reach that. So instead of using the 9th for that chord, what we're going to do is we're going to use the 13th. All right. Now the 13th, if you remember, the root is 8, 9 is the next one, right? And then 10, 11, 12, 13. So I'm on F. Let's say that that's 1 or 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So 13 is D. So now I'm going to move my fingers so you can see what I'm playing here, right? So I have C7, then to F7, C7, F7. Okay. Now there's one more chord in our blues, and that would be G7. And then we're going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to take this F7 chord and we're just going to move it up to G. So here on F we have the 7th, the 3rd, the 13th. We're going to do exactly the same thing on G. Now one way of doing that is just take these notes and move it up a half step and then another half step like that. That's one way of doing it, kind of like the crab crawl, just moving up. But let's do it theory-wise. With G, 7, and then 1, 2, there's our 3rd, 3, 4, 5, 6, 13th. Okay? So that's G7, F7, C7. Okay? So now if I just improvise over that, and I'm just using my blues scale. Now I'm going to put my fingers back because, boy, holding your fingers like that starts to hurt after a while. So you should be playing with your fingers out like this. And then on this F7, notice that you might have to kind of get your finger a little bit deeper into the key bed here. So that's playing a blues using just those rootless chord voicings down there. Now a good way of practicing as well is practicing with the root in the left hand and then the chord in the right hand. So you can kind of hear the way it would sound along with a bass player. And you could just do octaves if you want. So make sure that you understand the concept of what's happening here. Basically, we're adding on to our guide tones. So we're playing the 3rd and the 7th of each of the chords, right? But then we're playing either the 9th or the 13th. On dominant 7th chords, 9 sounds great and 13 sounds great as well. Now you might see in some of your music, it might say C7 flat 9. Well, if that's the case, there's C7 flat 9 and there's C7 sharp 9. Try playing through the blues, just a basic blues in C using just the chords C, F, and G7, all right, and do these rootless chord voicings. Stay tuned for some DVDs that will also have some of these more explanation over the blues and when to use these different chords. Because depending on the style of the blues that you're playing, you might not want to be playing these chords. It might sound a little too jazzy. All right, you might want to do something that sounds a little bit more apropos for that particular style that you're working on. So have fun. Okay, in this e-lesson, I'm going to talk about how to use those rootless chord voicings that I was speaking about before over a 2-5-1 progression. So very briefly, I don't have a lot of time to be able to talk about 2-5-1s. It is within the jazzpianolessons.com website. There's DVDs and movies that do talk in more detail about 2-5-1s. But basically what a 2-5-1 is if we were to take our diatonic chords in any key, right? All right, the 2 is the 2 chord, the 5 is the 5 chord, and the 1 as well, the 1 chord. So 2, 5, 1 in the key of C is D minor 7, G7, C major 7. And what you'll notice in jazz is that, actually jazz and also popular music as well, is that you'll see a lot of these 2-5-1s. In addition to that, you might just see just the 2-5 part, so a minor chord moving to a dominant chord. And you'll know it's a 2-5 if it's a minor chord moving up a fourth to a dominant chord. So a D minor to a G7, or let's say an F minor to a B flat 7. All right? This is where understanding the circle of fifths kind of helps you out a little bit, because if you go backwards in the circle of fifths, that's your circle of fourths. And this is exactly what I'm talking about, moving by a fourth. So a C to an F, right? So a C minor 7 to an F7, F dominant 7th chord, that's a 2-5. And then normally it'll go to the 1, which would be B flat major 7. Anyway, let's talk about 2-5-1 in the key of C, all right? And if we have time, we'll do one in another key as well. The rootless chord voicings are the guide tones, the 3rd and the 7th, or the 7th and the 3rd, and then it adds one more tension to it, okay? So if we take D minor 7 here, right? There's my 7th chord. I'm going to get rid of the root, and I'm going to play the root down here, okay, with my left hand. And over here in the right hand, I'm going to play the 3rd and the 7th. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add on the 9th, okay? And now when I go to G7, the first thing you should do is always think, okay, do I have notes from this G7 chord already in my hand, okay? Now on the right hand, you notice, what note is this? The F, right? Well, on G7, this is the 7th. What about the C? Well, that would be 11, so we're not going to use 11. We're looking for 7 and 3. So, but what if we move this 11 or 4 down to 3, and then this E up here as well? Guess what? It's the 13th. And remember, on dominant 7th chords, 9 and 13 sound great. 9 sounds great on most chords. Dominants 9 and 13 sounds great. Majors 9, sharp 11 sounds great. Minors 9 and natural 11 sounds great. So once again, here's D minor 7, and then there's G7, and then we're going to go to C major 7. Once again, look for common tones. There's my 7th. That's 4. Move it down to 3, right? Now, you might think, well, why not just use the 3 up here? Well, the reason is I want to move this 3 to my 9, okay? If I kept that as 3 and played 9 up there, you hear how it's not a great voice leading, whereas this sounds really nice, okay? So let me do it up an octave here so you can see it a little bit better, right? D minor 7, G7, C major 7, okay? So it's D minor 7 with the 9, G7 with the 13, to C major 7 with the 9th. Now, you might also be thinking, well, on the minor, could you add in the 11? Well, sure, you could do that, okay? But for right now, I'd say stay away from the 11. Just do one tension. Now, could you do the 11 up here? Yeah, you could do that as well, but... I'm sorry, yeah. Could you do the 11 up here? Yeah, you could do that. But one problem is you might not be able to reach that far, okay? And the other issue is that you might find that it's just a little too open, whereas this gives you that ninth and gives you that nice third sound there, right? So, okay. Now, let's try doing that in another key. So let's take the key of G. All right, 2-5-1 in the key of G is A minor 7 to D7 to G major 7. So if I take A minor 7, 3, 7, 9, then go to D7, 7, 3rd, 13th, and then G major 7, 3rd, 7th, 9th. Now remember, I've been doing this in which the 3rd is the low note, right, for the A minor. I'm starting with the 3rd down here. What if I wanted to start with the 7th down there? Okay, there's my 7th and my 3rd. Now what do I put up here? Well, in this case, what I would do is I would use your 5th, all right? Because 9th, it works, sure. 11 works, sure, okay? And then throwing in the 9, yeah, that works as well, kind of. It's a cluster, right? But once again, adding in the 5th gives you a little bit more spread on your chord here. And then to D7, right? 3rd, 7th, 9th, and then G major 7. You could do it with the 6 up here, or do it with the 5th up there, okay? I personally think that both sound nice, but in this case, the 5th would probably work a little bit better for you. So, now, you can also, in the left hand, play root 7, root 3, and then root 7. So I can do something like this. I could do root 7, 3rd, right, 5th. So you see how that's the chord that I just played, right? And then up here, add on the root, or better still, add on the 9th. Right? See that? A minor 7 to D7, and then here going down the G7, you can do that. That sounds nice. Okay, so this is how you can take some of these rootless chords and play them over different chord patterns. And a very popular chord pattern, like I said, is the 2-5-1. So once again, in C, D minor 7, G7, C major 7. If I were to do it in G, here's a different voicing. This is the 7th on the bottom, right? A minor 7, D7, right? And then G major 7. So try practicing those 2-5-1s in several different keys so that you really feel comfortable working with them. Have fun. In this E lesson, what I'm going to talk about is some turnarounds and different endings that you can use. Okay, there's a DVD series with jazz piano lessons that talks about turnarounds and endings and some fills and stuff that you can check out. But let's do this some work today over the song "In the Wee Small Hours of the Morning." It's out of the Real book on page 210. There's a link if you want to buy it. Just look for the link, and then it'll take you right to Sheet Music Plus, and you can order it online. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on the last 4 measures of the song. Okay, so let me just play it, and we'll get into it here. So, okay, it's a very beautiful song, and you know, you can see it's pretty basic here, right? Now, at the very end of the song, you end up having 2 measures on that C6 chord, okay? Until finally you go back into the melody. Now, 2 measures is a lot of time, especially if you want to go back into the song and maybe play it again. Is a lot of time to just be holding over that one chord. I guess you could go. do something like that if you want to, where you just kind of arpeggiate the chord. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a couple of different turnarounds that you can use that sound really hip. The first turnaround that we're going to use is we're going to use what's called a 1-6-2-5 turnaround. It's a very popular turnaround, and a lot of jazz musicians will say, "Oh yeah, it's a 1-6-2-5." Oh, okay. Well, what 1-6-2-5 means is they're talking about the diatonic chords, the 1 chord to the 6 chord to the 2 chord to the 5 chord. Now, if I was just going to do that with just basic block chords here, it'd be 1, 6, 2, 5. Now, you've heard that pattern before. Now, in Heart and Soul, they actually do 1-6-4-5. But 1-6-4-5 and 1-6-2-5 are almost the same thing. Okay. So now, instead of just playing it as regular old block chords like this, all we got to do is just divide it up into shelves like we've done before. So here we have D minor 7, right? I'm playing the melody here, right? Okay. So here's my root 7 in the melody. Now when I go here to the melody, this is A flat 7 and it says flat 5. Well, that's your flat 5. All I'm doing here is adding on my 9th and the 3rd. If I get rid of the 9th, I get that. Right? And then I go to G7. I can do just plain old G7, root 7, 3rd, and the melody, which happens to be the 13th. Or I could also throw my 9th in there. And now when I go to C6, I can do that, root, 3rd, 6th, melody. And now I don't have to keep that melody, that C, holding out for 2 measures, because guess what? At this point it's pretty much died out, and that's like 2-3 beats later. So really what I could do is C6, A minor 7, D minor 7, G7, and then back into the song. Okay? So let's look at what I just did there. C6, right? And I did root 7, 3rd, A minor 7, root 7, 3rd, D minor 7, root 3, 7, and then G7, root 7, 3rd. Now, you don't even necessarily even have to keep playing this note up here as well. You could do, right? That sounds beautiful as well. Okay? Let's talk about another ending that you can use. This one is, well, let's see. Let's do this one. Okay. I'm going to have you do the 1, flat 3, flat 6, flat 2 ending, or turnaround rather. You can also use it as an ending, but here you have 1, and then flat 3, flat 6, flat 2. Okay? That's a beautiful, beautiful turnaround there as well. So the first one was 1-6-2-5. This one is 1, flat 3, flat 6, flat 2. And the flat 3, the flat 6, the flat 2, they're all major 7 chords. Okay, so we start with our 1 chord, right, or 1-6, and then we go to flat 3. Now notice what I'm doing. I'm just playing root 5, 3, okay, and the melody up here, because putting in the 7th is a little too dense right there. Where if I was up here, that would sound much better. Okay, so C6. Once again, I don't have to play that again. I can just hold it down. So this is root 5th 3rd, root 5th 7th. I can maybe get away with the 3rd. Sounds a little tense, all right? So I'm going to use my 5th instead, and then root 5th and 3rd down here for D flat, right? So that's another very nice turnaround that you can use. And I don't think I said it before, but basically all a turnaround is, it's you're ending on this chord and you have to start on this chord, and it's just a way to get from that ending back to the beginning again, okay? Because if you were just going to end the song, that's fine, just like that, okay? You don't have to do anything else. But if you want to turn it around and go back to the beginning, you need a couple of chords in there to mess around with, and that's what a turnaround is. Now, I said that I'd also tell you an ending. One nice ending to use is when you have a song like this, is that you can go up a half step and play a major 7 chord. So, so I just went up a half step, played a major 7 chord. Like I said, I'll explain more of that in the DVD on turnarounds, fills, and endings. Okay, if you're going to play, well, let's stay with the ballad for a minute here. And if you're going to keep going with the ballad, you could go. Right, just play a 4 chord and then to a 1 chord. That's your typical amen cadence, all right? That's a nice ending as well. So you can even play the C down here while you hold that 4 chord down to the 1 chord. So you can see there's a lot of different options that you can come up with. Unfortunately, we don't have time to go through all of them on this short E lesson. But if you're interested in more of the turnarounds, the endings, and fills, I encourage you to either subscribe or check out the DVD. I think that you would really like it. So, have fun. In this E lesson, I'm going to talk about some different blues progressions and when you would use each of them. In fact, I'm going to talk about 2 specific blues progressions. What I like to call a basic blues progression, and then what I like to call a more advanced blues progression. The basic blues progression you use when normally playing with like a shuffle kind of band, or if you're just playing a lot of times with acoustic guitar players or rock players. And a basic blues progression only consists of 3 chords. The advanced blues progression is what you would normally play, maybe if you're playing R&B or funk, or actually most of the time with jazz. So let's talk about the basic blues progression. First of all, what is the blues? The blues is a form of music, and it's also a style of music. It's in fact one of the only styles of music that I know of that actually has a specific form to it. And what I mean by that is if someone came up to you and said, hey, let's play a classical, or let's play a jazz, that to you probably shouldn't mean, oh, it means that we should be playing this. Whereas if someone says, let's play a blues, there's a specific form to the blues that everyone knows, and everyone should know if you want to be a professional or even semi-professional musician. Now, there's only 3 chords that you need. So in the key of C, it's the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord. All right. The 1 chord is C7, the 4 chord is F, the 5 chord is G. All of the chords are going to be dominant 7ths in the basic blues progression, okay? And over a blues, you'll use just 1 scale for improvisation. Well, let me take that back. You could use several scales, but for right now, you could use just the blues scale, all right? And that would be the C blues scale. C, E flat, F, F sharp, G, B flat, C. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Go down as well. Sometimes people get confused and think, oh, well, when I'm on the C7, I use the C blues scale. When I'm on the F7 chord, I use the F blues scale. No, just use the C blues scale over the entire blues progression. It works, okay? You might find that some notes don't sound that great. Well, those are the notes that you would want to avoid. Obviously, like, that might not sound all that great if you keep hanging on that. But if you go, that sounds okay, all right? So it's a matter of having tension and then releasing that tension. Okay, so the blues progression is typically a 12-bar blues, all right? And then the basic blues progression starts with 4 measures of C, okay, so 4 measures of the 1 chord, then 2 measures of the 4 chord, which is F, back to 2 measures of C, which is the 1 chord, right? And then a measure of the 5 chord, a measure of the 4 chord, and then back to the 1 chord for 1 measure, and then back to the 5 chord. So let me just play that real quick. Right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to use inversions here. Okay? Actually, you know what? I'm not going to use inversions the first time. I'll just simply go through and play root position. So it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. One more measure of C7. Now F. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then back to C7. One more measure. 2. then a measure of G7, 1, 2, 3, then F, 1, 2, 3, and back to C, 2, 3, 4, and then G. Okay? Now, there are a lot of different alterations that you'll find. You might play with a blues band, and they're like, oh, okay, take it down from the 5, all right? And then all that means is that you're going to be starting on the 5 chord, and then you're going to start. Okay? So that's where you got to use your ears, okay? But if you're playing a basic blues progression, then you only have 3 chords that you have to really figure out. So just listen for that for the bass motion. Okay, the other thing that sometimes gets changed in the blues progression is you go from the 1 chord to what we call a quick 4. All right, so that's instead of having 4 measures of the 1 chord, in the second measure go to the 4 chord, then go back to the 1. So in that 4 measures, right, for the 1 chord, in the second measure here, all right, making sure that you can see this correctly, in the second measure here, change that to a 4 chord, and then go back to two more measures of the 1 chord. All right, so that progression is 1, 4, 1, 1, 4, 4, 1, 1, 5, 4, 1, 5. Sometimes also at the end of the blues progression, we don't stay. We don't go to the 5 chord, we just stay on the 1 chord for 2 measures. So instead of going to 5 and measure 12, just stay on the 1 chord. And of course, all of this I'm going to be able to explain in a lot more depth and detail in the blues DVD. So if you're interested in learning more about the blues, I definitely suggest either subscribing or checking out that DVD. Okay, so now let's move on to the more advanced blues progression. We were talking about rootless chords, right? I'm going to use rootless chords here to do this progression, okay? So the progression is 1 chord for 1 measure, then the 4 chord, right? So this is F7, right? E flat, A, and D. And then 2 more measures of the 1 chord, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. 2 measures of the 4 chord, 4, 1, 2, 3. 1 measure of the 1 chord, 2, 3, 4. Then we can go to an A7 chord, which we would call 5/7 of 2. All right. If you don't understand what that means, don't worry about it right now. Okay. So A7, 2, 3, then D7, or you could also do D minor 7. I like the D7 sound. All right, and this would be what we would call 5/7 of 5. If you don't understand, don't worry about that. That's all right. Then D7, and then G7, and then this last 2 measures is what we call our turnaround, all right? And this gets us back to the 1. We just talked about that in a previous E lesson. So it's 1, 5/7 of 2, 2, 5. So if I do this with just a basic bass line down here, I'm going to talk about bass lines in another E lesson, but listen to what it sounds like. I'll do the chords up here so I don't get in the way. So you see, you can kind of move your chords around as well. Like I came down here for the D, because a lot of times I like playing it more down here because you get more of the, what I like to call the meat of the piano, where you get this nice, this sounds sometimes a little thin to me. You can also change the inversion, but that's a whole nother thing. Okay, so just to wrap up here, 2 things in this E lesson. All right, these 2 blues progressions. You have your basic blues progression, which just uses your 1, 4, and 5 chords, and you have your more advanced blues progression, which adds in that A7 chord and the D7 chord. All right, so it only adds in 2 more chords, so there's only 5 chords. All right, and that progression is C, or 1/7, right, for 1 measure, then F7 for 1 measure, then C7 for 2 measures, F7 for 2 measures, C7 for 1 measure, A7 for 1 measure, D7 for 1 measure, G7 for 1 measure. And then within the span of 2 measures, it goes C for 2 beats, A7 for 2 beats, D7 for 2 beats, G7 for 2 beats. And we're back at the top. Okay? So there's a lot involved with playing jazz, blues, and blues in general. You know, it might sound like at times like it's a simple simple style to play, but in reality, all styles of music, to really play them well, there's a lot of intricacies that you got to learn. So start by learning this progression, do it in the key of C, but then you also want to do it in other keys. Some typical keys are C, F, and G are good piano keys, but you want to learn in like E, A, and B, okay, because those are guitar keys. B flat, E flat, F, those are more like sax, trumpet kind of keys, okay? The key of D as well, is another good key to learn it in. Usually like blues in C sharp, blues in F sharp, sometimes even A flat. These three keys are less popular than all of the other keys, okay? And then once again, just use your blues scale throughout the whole thing. Okay? And if you want to learn some more blues licks like I was just doing, and double stops and different blues grooves, check out the blues DVD. All right? So take care. Have fun. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about approaches, okay? And how you can use approaches in your playing, and then also in a future E-lesson, I'm going to talk about using approaches with bass lines. So let's get started. If you take a look at a C major triad here, okay, C, E, and G, there's a couple of different ways of approaching each one of these notes. Okay, let's just take the note C to start. Now, think about what the word approach means. You're here and you're going over there, okay? You're trying to get from point A to point B. So, for instance, if you want to approach someone, you can approach them from the front, you can approach them from the back, you can come down from the top, a lot of different ways of approaching someone. If you want to get inside of your house, you can go through the front door, the back door, the side door, okay? Many different ways of approaching something. It's no different in music. So if this is our target, we can go a half step above the target and then go down to the target, or go a half step below the target and then go to the target. So that's what we would call a half step approach. Another approach is whole step. Whole step above, whole step below. We can combine those together, whole step below, half step above, right? Or half step below, and whole step above. In addition to that, we can also do a double chromatic. Now a chromatic is, when we go to the very next note, it's a half step. Going up in half steps is going up a chromatic scale. So a double chromatic would be starting a whole step and then going down in half steps. So that's a double chromatic. One chromatic, two chromatics. Double chromatic from below would be, right? And then you can mix those as well. Half from above, double chromatic from below. So now you can see, if I take that C chord, I can kind of mess around with these approaches and do different lines and licks from that. So you see those different ways of approaching each one of those notes, doing half step above, half step below, double chromatics, whole steps, okay? I talk about this in more detail in the Basics of Improvisation DVD, DVD 201. But let's talk about our C7 chord here and different ways in which we can approach these notes. So you see how I was doing half step from above, all right, and I can do half step from below. Oops. Okay, those are half step from belows. Let me just do a regular old C7 shell, right? I can do double chromatics. Okay, so by using these different approaches, you're able to really start to come up with many different cool sounds using just chord tones and approaches. So try messing around with a couple of different chords, majors, minors, and see if you can do those approaches. Once again, it's half step from above, half step from below, whole step from above, whole step from below, double chromatic from above, double chromatic from below. And then all the combinations of mixing it up, half from above, double chromatic from below, and so on. So have fun. In this e-lesson, I'm going to show you something that a lot of players want to learn, and that is how do you create a jazz bass line. Now, if you haven't gone through the other e-lessons, definitely go through them before starting this one, especially the e-lesson on approaches, because I'm going to be talking about approaches and using them in this e-lesson. There's a couple of rules that you want to keep in mind before creating a bass line. Now remember, when I say rules, rules are, meant to be broken. So these are kind of more like strong guidelines that I would suggest that you follow right now. But as you get better, you can change them. The first guideline or rule is that you should always hit the root of the chord on the chord change. So in other words, when you see it says C7, up above the melody, you should be hitting a C in the left hand on that first beat. So if you have, if it's going from, let's take a blues and going from C7 to F7. So we have C7, 2, 3, 4 to F7 on the next measure. You want to make sure on beat 1 you hit a C, and on beat 1 of the next measure you hit the root of an F7 chord, which is F. Okay, that's the first thing. Second of all, I would suggest that you only use quarter notes for right now. Of course, you can use eighth notes and 16th notes and all that other stuff. But for right now, in 4/4 time, just keep a steady bass line going. So you should have 4 quarter notes, 4 beats in every measure. It should be boom, 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 boom. It should be a steady bass line. Okay. Another guideline that I would follow is use only chord tones for right now. So that's the root, the third, the fifth, the seventh, okay? And in addition to that, I would say we're going to start just with the root and the fifth, and then we're going to use approaches. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to create a bass line using just the roots and the fifth and approaches, okay? So that's enough guidelines for right now. Let's get into making a bass line. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a bass line over a blues progression. And I'm going to use that more advanced blues progression, the second one that I talked about in the blues E lesson. So we have C7, and we're going from C7 to F7. Okay, we have one measure on C7, and we're going one measure to F7. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my root, fifth, root. And what that does, that gets me the first 3 beats, okay, of that measure. So I have the root, the fifth, and the root. Notice I'm starting on the root, at the beginning of the measure. So root, 5, root. And now I have to get to F7, all right? Now there's 2 ways in which I can get there. I can do a half step from above or a half step from below. Now you might be thinking, well, wait a second. In the approaches lesson, you talked about double chromatics, you talked about whole steps and all that. Exactly, I did. But for right now, when doing bass lines, I only want you to think of the half-step approaches, okay? Once again, this is for right now. So only approaching the target from a half step from above or from a half step from below. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. You see what I did? I did the half step from above. So I have C, G, C, then, right, the G flat, right, going down to F. Now, could I use E? You bet. Whoops. Right, half step below, going up to the F. That's perfectly fine as well. Let's continue. So we have to go C, right, to F, but now we have to get back to C. Well, I'm going to do my root, fifth, root, and then I'm going to do an approach right here, getting back to C, right? So I'm going to go C, G, C, G flat, F, C, F, D flat, right, and I'm going to get back to C. And now notice what I'm doing here. C, G, C, right? So now I'm going the other way. Now I'm going backwards. So once again, C, G, C, G flat, F, C, F, D flat, C, G, C, G, and now I go back to my C. Now, let's stop for a second and talk about that. So you should understand all this up to here, right? And then getting back to C. But now once we get to this C, remember there's 2 measures of C right here. So we have 1, 2, 3. Now on those other chords, I was doing 1, 2, 3 approach, but now it's a C chord again, right? So I don't have to approach it because it's exactly the same chord. So what I do instead is just go back up to the 5th. And then to keep, my bass line, down low, now this time I go down to the C again, to the root, then the 5th. And then I'm going back to the F chord, so now I'll approach from below, right? So first measure, C, root, 5th, root, then approach the F, which is in the second measure, then root, 5th, root, approach the C, which is in the third measure, then root, 5th, root, 5th. So that's what you do when you have a chord that, when you have two measures of the same chord. In the first measure, do your root, 5th, root, 5th, okay? And now in the second measure of that C, which would be measure 4 of the blues, I have one more measure of C, so I go 1, 2, 3, and then I go to the F, so, right, half step, root, 5th, root, 5th, right, and then I have two measures of F, so root, 5th, root, approach to the C. Right, now I'm going to the A, so this is root, 5th, root, I'm approaching the A, then root, 5th, root, right, and then approach the D, root, 5th, root, approach the G, root, 5th. If you can't see that, I'm playing a G down here, and then I approach the C again. Okay, so let me go through that with the chords. Now you might think, oh wait a second, I'm going to hit here. Just move my hand. Now here, when I have two chords per measure, right, C to A to D to G, it's just root, approach, root, approach, root, approach, root, approach. Okay? So once again, if you'd like more information on this technique, I'd say take a look at the DVD on the blues, and then also I'll be doing one on bass lines. So take a look at those, or subscribe and check out the movies inside. Have fun. All right, in this E lesson, I'm going to focus on major and minor, okay, and being able to know the difference between the two. Let's take a major scale here to start. So we have C major scale, right? Now, every key has a related major and a related minor, okay? So first of all, let's review. There's 12 keys of music, right? We have C, we have C sharp, right, D, all the 12 keys, all right, from between C and C. So there's a key of E, there's a key of F, there's a key of G sharp, well, actually, there's a key of A flat, right? You really wouldn't use G sharp that much, okay? There's a key of B, so on and so forth, all right? Now, think of major scale and key being the same thing for right now, because it pretty much means the same thing. So when we're playing in the key of E, we're kind of thinking E major scale, all right? If we're playing in the key of C, then we can kind of think of C major scale. And then kind of, for the most part, you can use that scale for improvisation. The reason I say for the most part and kind of is because usually, especially jazz songs, don't stay in one key for a while. All right. If the chords are all diatonic to that key, then you can get away with using the major scale throughout it. But if they're not diatonic, then you won't be able to use the major scale throughout the entire piece. And I explain a lot of diatonicism and stuff like this in the subscribers area and on the DVDs. So, like I said, every key has a related minor key to it. So every major key has a related minor key, and every minor key has a related major key to it. Now, it's real simple to figure out and be able to play these different scales because it's all based off of the major scale, right? Now, I've talked about modes before, albeit briefly, but let me just tell you what a mode is, okay? And let's review this. If we have, imagine we had a kind of a ruler here, right? And we put it right up to our scale, okay? And we went from the root to the root, all right? That would be one mode. But now what if we just shifted it over a little bit? That would be another mode, another mode, another mode, another mode. So pretend like, boom, from there to there's one mode. Boom, from there to there's another mode, another mode, another mode. And what I mean is playing all the notes of the C major scale starting on C and going to C, all right? That's one mode. There's another mode, all right? Another mode. Now, all of these modes have names: Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian, back to Ionian. Okay, and I don't have enough time to be able to go through all of them and explain why you use them, but there are lessons in jazzpianolessons.com that do explain a lot more about the modes and how you use them. Okay, so if we go to our sixth mode, right, of our major scale, that is our natural minor scale right here, okay? So this is the minor key. So A to A, using the C major scale, is the natural minor, is the relative minor to the key of C, all right? So that means that, all right, I could be playing in C major, right? And then, okay? Or I could be playing in A minor. Okay? So how do you figure out if you're in major or you're in minor? Well, one way of doing it is take a look at the chord that you're starting on and the chord that you're ending on. If it's a minor chord, then, well, there's a pretty good chance that you're in a minor key. Also look at your key signature. Now, this is where the knowing the major scale and the natural minor helps come in, all right? Because the natural minor scale shares the same key signature as the major scale. So A minor, right, shares the same key signature as C major. No sharps, no flats. So if you saw your G clef and then your 4/4 time, and you didn't see any key signature in between them, right? So no sharps or no flats, and you saw it started on an A minor chord, right? And it's ending on an A minor chord, well, there's a pretty good chance that you're in the key of A minor, right? Songs will also modulate and move in between. That's what modulate means. So you might start in this key and then move to that key. Songs will a lot of times modulate from the major key into the minor key, or pull chords from each of those different keys. So you might be in minor but then pull a major chord. A good example of that is in A minor, in A natural minor, you're not going to use E minor, right? You'll use E7, okay? And you'll notice that this is getting pulled right from A major rather than A minor. So there's E7, A minor. This is what happens if I go E minor. Doesn't sound as strong of a resolution as E7, right? Now, let me tell you another way of finding major and natural minor. Okay, let's take C for instance. Okay, we want to find out We want to find out what the related major of C minor is. So here we have C minor. Okay, now we could think, what scale has C as the sixth mode of? Well, geez, we could count down, I guess. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, is it E? Well, no, it's not E, because E doesn't even have a C in it. Well, what about an E flat? Okay, yeah, sure. All right, so it's E flat. So C minor and E flat share the same key signature and the same notes. So if I wanted to play C minor, this is my C natural minor scale, right? It's the same thing as E flat major, right? But what's going to give me that minor sound is if I keep coming back to to C down here. Whereas if I kept doing this, even though I'm playing the C down here, it still sounds like E flat major because I'm hitting my E flat down here. So one way of doing it is counting backwards, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and finding out what scale it is that way. Or another way is take your minor chord, and it's the third of your minor chord. So whatever the third is, that's your major scale that you're going to use. So let's do an easier one. D minor. Okay, well, I want to think, all right, it's D minor. What scale can I use? All right, and then what's the related major key? Well, there's my third. Well, F. Now I got to start that F scale on D. Now there's three types of minor scales that you would typically use, right? One of them is Dorian, which is the second mode of major, okay? The other one is natural minor, right, which is the sixth mode of major, okay? And the last one is harmonic minor, which is the same thing as your natural minor, but you have a raised seventh. It's a real nice sound as well. Okay, so play this video back and just try and wrap your mind around major and relative minor. Okay, take a look at some of the songs in in your real book. Let's see if I can find one here for you quickly. Now it's kind of here's one. If you take a look at the Bill Evans song Interplay, which is on page 215, you'll notice that the first chord is F minor. Now the last chord is actually G flat major, but it's a blues and it's going back to your F minor. But look at the key signature, it has 4 flats in it. 4 flats is A flat, right? Okay, well, F minor, boom, 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 A flat. So the song is actually in minor. It's a blues in F minor. So if you were to be playing this, you could be playing your A flat major scale, just start it on F. Okay, so it takes a little while to kind of wrap your mind around it, but I think with the information you get in this video, you'll be one step closer. And like I said, if you're interested, you could sign up as a student and get some more personalized instruction from me as well. So have fun and take care. In this e-lesson, what I'm going to explain to you is what scales you can use to improvise. Okay? Now, unfortunately, with the time constraint of this lesson, I can't go through all of the different scales, but let me give you some guidelines that you can follow that will help you understand a little bit better which scales you should be using. All right, the first thing is take a look at what key you're in. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the song All the Things You Are as a, well actually, you know what, I'm going to use Autumn Leaves here, all right? So I'm going to use the first 3 measures here of Autumn Leaves, okay? And I have, right, A minor 7, right, to D7, right? So G major 7, okay? Now, you look at that and you look at the key signature, and the key signature has 1 sharp. Okay, now that 1 sharp you should know is the key of G. All right, so key of G major. Now I told you before to think, well, if you see it starting on a minor chord, then does that mean that it's in the key of minor? Well, you got to think now. G major, right, is the same thing as E minor. Okay, so if it was starting on an E minor chord, then maybe it could be in the key of minor, but this A minor is actually the 2 chord in the key of G. All right, and this gets into the discussion of diatonic 7th chords. Right, and this is something that I explain much more in the site. But basically, a diatonic 7th chord is building 7th chords on each note of the scale using only notes from that scale. Okay. So those are the diatonic 7th chords in the key of G. All right. Now, if the chords are diatonic, then you can just simply use the major scale over those chords, right? You don't have to use anything different. So whenever you have chords that are diatonic and they're basically using just notes from the major scale, then you can use the major scale over them. So for instance, here I have A minor 7 to D7 to G major 7. I can just use my G major scale over the whole thing. Okay? And then, obviously you want to work out some different patterns, and if you want it to sound more like along the lines of A minor, then you might want to start more, might want to start on the A, all right, or use the chord tones from the chord as well, right? You might understand that that's a 2-5-1 in the key of G. So bing, right there, you could be thinking to yourself, well, over 2-5-1s, all I need to do is use my major scales, all right? When I was in school, we would talk about Dorian and Mixolydian and Ionian over the 2-5-1, but the reality is it's a lot easier if you just think of your 2-5-1 as being a big major scale. Just improvise over the major scale. All right, so major scale is one thing that you can use. Now, if I try improvising over this entire song using just the major scale, this is kind of what I get. You see that I use just G major scale throughout this, right? Notice how I'm able to play the G major scale starting on any note, all right? And that's what you want to be able to do as well. Just be able to start that major scale so you don't always have to be starting back at G, Be able to move it around, right? And create lines just using that scale and weaving all throughout it. Now you hear, for the most part, it doesn't sound all that bad, okay? Now, something else that you can use is the blues scale. Now, the blues scale obviously works over the blues. So if you're playing a blues in C, then use the C blues scale. Now, don't get confused and think, oh, if I'm on C, I use the C blues scale, and then when I, go to F, then I use the F blues scale. No. What you do is, if you're playing a blues in the key of C, use C blues scale for all of the chords. If you're playing a blues in the key of G, use the G blues scale for all of the chords, okay? It does work, and it does make sense, all right? You might hit some notes that are what we would call avoid notes, all right? And all an avoid note is, well, when you get to something that sounds a little bit, actually, that wouldn't be right, but if you're getting to, let's see, I'm trying to think of a good one. Well, here on F7. There you go, F7, right? And this is one of the notes from the C blues scale. Obviously, the B flat doesn't sound the greatest, all right? So you would want to avoid that note. And all that means is you don't want to end on it and keep playing that note because it's going to sound silly. All right, so the blues scale is another scale that you can use, and you don't necessarily just have to use it over the blues, okay? You can use it over other chords as well, and it usually works over dominant seventh chords, okay? And it's usually going to work when you're playing something that is kind of a bluesy kind of sound. Let's see if I can find one here for you quickly. All right, Angel Eyes, all right? So, all right, so Angel Eyes moves, these chords in here are a little wonky here, but Angel Eyes basically moves between C minor 7, A flat 7 to G7, right? And you could use your blues scale throughout all of that. Okay, so we have major scale, we have blues scale. Now, when you have minor chords, remember we can kind of mess around and use that natural minor scale that we were talking about. So if you have C minor, that's the same thing as E flat major. Right? Now, there's obviously a lot of other scales that you can learn. There's the altered scale, there's pentatonic scales, okay, and then there's all of your different modes, which is really like I said, just your major scale, but it's just in how you think about using them, okay? But something else that you should consider using is chord tones, and I covered this in the DVD 201, Basics of Improv, and that's where using chord tones, you're able to outline the chords and not really have to be thinking scales, you could be thinking chord tones. So once again, if I go back to Autumn Leaves here, you know, I could just use I'm just using chord tones. You can start to throw in some tensions as well. Okay, so chord tones are another great avenue and another nice avenue to take when doing improvisation. So that means that you really have to know your chords. So make sure you practice your scales, really get your scales down really well, okay, your major scales, and that's going to also help you with your minor scales and your modes. And make sure you really understand your chords. One thing I did when I was a kid is I had flashcards, and I would just be like, oh, boom, you know, G minor 7 flat 5, G, B flat, D flat, F, you know, and I would have to go through all these different chords. My father would drill me on this stuff, right? But what ended up happening is I really got these chords down well and was able to move between them easily and think about them for improvisation. So to wrap up, major scale, minor scale, your blues scale, use chords, all right? Avoid notes or just notes from the chord or from the scale that sound a little bit tense, you're going to want to avoid. Don't worry about that too much because your ear is going to start to pick up on them and you're going to naturally know, I remember like the last 300 times that I played that note, it didn't sound all that great, so let me not play it again, okay? It takes a while, but you can definitely do it, all right? So just keep working on it and have fun. And if you need some guidance, check out the DVDs and the subscription because that will help you out a lot as well. So thanks a lot. Have fun. In this e-lesson, I'm going to talk about how to play over different styles of music. Different styles interpret rhythm differently, and that's one of the major differences between styles of music. Let me give you a perfect example. If you're going to play classical music, that's typical. You would play the eighth note straight. You wouldn't play it like, you know, that would sound kind of silly, all right? Whereas if you were playing jazz, it would sound silly if you played everything straight and not swung, okay? So that's kind of a big easy to recognize difference right there. But sometimes there's some subtle differences between styles. For instance, if you're going to play a blues shuffle, should you play the eighth note straight or swung, or are they kind of triplet feel? If you're playing a funk or a Latin, is it straight? Is it swung? Well, I'm going to help you out here. I'm going to go through three styles of music. We're going to start with a blues shuffle, then we're going to do a blues funk, and I'm going to do a jazz blues. I'm going to do this all over the 12-bar blues that I spoke about in a previous E-lesson, okay? I'm going to use the basic blues progression, which is just the three chords, C, F, and G, and I'm going to use, over the jazz one, I'm going to use the more advanced blues progression. Obviously, I'm going to have to go through this kind of quick, but all of this information is explained in detail in the Blues DVD. If you subscribe, you get access to it, or you can purchase the DVD. All right, and then these play-alongs you also get access to as well. All right, so let's get started. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pop my my little iPod here in. And then this is a good way to practice, you know, because you can hear your piano, all right, or your keyboard, and then also listen to your iPod. If you want to be able to play along with your iPod, if you have a keyboard and you kind of plug it in, right, you can get a cord to go from the iPod and your keyboard to a small mixer. And you can get some of these small mixers for, you know, like $30 or so. So I'll put some links on the website so you can get these different items. But that's worked out for a lot of students of mine in the past as well, where they'll have an iPod, they'll have their keyboard, they plug it into a mixer, and you can adjust the volume, and then that way you can play along with your song right in your headphones. So here we go. So now here you see this is a, well, you know what? This is supposed to be the shuffle one. Okay, let's do this again. So on the shuffle, you're going to notice it's going to be your basic blues progression, just using 1, 4, and 5, right? But then what I'm going to do is you'll see that I'm using triplets more, all right? You can also use just your basic 7th chords. So, see how I'm using chord tones? Using my blues scale, right? You could do a simple pattern like this. Okay. So what I did here was I'm using a triplet patterns, right? Triplet, 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 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1 and 2 and 3 and okay, however you want to think about it, right? And then down here in the left hand, I could just get away with just using my regular old block chords. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to a funk accompaniment, and what you're going to notice over the funk accompaniment is, well, here, you take a listen, see if you can get it first. Now let me do what I wasn't doing. Notice how in funk it sounds kind of weird to swing the 8th notes. It sounds much better if you play the 8th note straight. Okay. Now I was doing this this chord, right? This just basic guide tones. You notice how the guide tones really work. It kind of gives you the sound of the chord enough so that when you're improvising, it sounds totally fine, all right? If you wanted to add on, this is a cool funk chord. I talk about this a little bit more in the blues DVD, but this is your C7 chord, but it has a sharp 9th on it. Very funky sounding chord, all right? So now let's go to the last one, which is a jazz swing accompaniment. And you'll notice here I can just use my basic, you know, blues progression I did before. Right? We talked about this in the blues E lesson. Just using the blues scale, right? My A7, right? Okay, so you know, you can hear some of those tips and tricks, and you know, you could try playing along with them. There's a lot of nice little licks that I did in this E lesson. If you need it broken down a little bit more, I suggest that you take a look at that blues DVD. I think it would help you out a lot. So let's just review here what happened in this E lesson, what we're talking about here. When playing over different styles of music, you might play straight 8th notes, all right? So the feel would be a little bit straighter, like a funk or classical would be more of a straight feel. Latin, most of the time, has more of a straight feel as well, okay? Or over like something like a blues shuffle, you might play more of a da-da-da-da-da-da-da, a triplet feel, all right? Some people might also refer to it as like a 12/8 feel, all right, where you have 4 beats in a measure, but you're thinking of right? That's also noise, that shuffle pattern, okay? And you could also do that down there while playing. I could have done that over that shuffle accompaniment as well, right? Did this bass line, right? Okay. Also notice when I was improvising over the blues, I just used the blues scale predominantly. Every now and again I threw in a little extra note, and I talk about that in some of the other DVDs and lessons online. But for the most part, I could have gotten away with just using just that blues scale, right? Notice how also thinking of it in blocks like this kind of helps, right? It makes it so that I can kind of stay in one area and I don't have to be moving all over the place and moving my finger under, moving my thumb, crossing my thumb under or crossing my fingers over. So take a look at, watch this video a couple of times, and don't forget you can also get all of these e-lessons as one package and watch them all at once as well, all right, on your own computer over and over again. So have fun and good luck. Well, we've come to lesson 20 now, and this lesson is going to be more about me just giving you some tips and tricks in where you can go from here rather than actually playing at the instrument right now. First of all, a couple of things. Learning an instrument, I'm sure you already know this, but sometimes it helps to state the obvious. It's a lifelong thing. It takes a long time to learn an instrument. It takes a long time to really feel comfortable playing it. But within that, you got to give yourself a break. Okay, so if you can record yourself either through video or through audio, say even today, all right, record yourself playing something and then go back a month, 2 months, 3 months, a year, 2 years later, and you should hear some progress, all right? You'll probably also see some progress, and your hands will feel much more relaxed. You might have better posture and so on, okay? It takes a while, but that's actually kind of the fun part of it, is seeing this progress, seeing yourself develop and get better at something, okay? So you want to push yourself, but you also want to make sure that you're patient with yourself. I see a lot of people that come into my studio and they can't get something right away and they get all upset about it. But the reality is you're not going to be able to get it right away, okay? If you could get it right away, then you probably wouldn't even be watching this video right now because you would already have it down, okay? It takes a while to learn something. I find it's also helpful to think of piano in terms of a language, okay? So think of learning the language of music, all right, in terms of how you learn your actual spoken language. Now, you might speak English, or at least you understand English because you're listening to me, but your mother tongue, the language that you learned when you were a baby might be different than English, okay? Think about how you learned language. You heard something over and over and over again, right? Until finally you said your first word, whatever that word was, right? But the point is you heard it probably hundreds, maybe even over 1,000 or 2,000 times before you actually repeated that word back. And then it continued that way, okay? As you went on, you went to school and you learned more and more, you had to hear things over and over and you had to practice things over and over, okay? So the point is that listening is a very important part of learning a language, and it's also a very important part of learning music as well. So what I like to tell my students is, half of it is taking lessons, but really the other half of it is listening, okay? And if you're really motivated, you can learn out of books and put on CDs, and, you could become a fantastic player, okay? I think the video helps you to be able to see things, but you really have to make sure also that you're listening. Now, let's talk about listening for a second. There's two types of listening in music. We have active listening and we have passive listening. Okay, active listening. Well, let me talk about passive first. Passive listening is when you're in the car and you turn the radio on. It's like, okay, and you're listening to the music. You might be singing along, okay, but you're really not focusing in on specific instruments and meters and tone and that kind of stuff. All right. Active listening is when you sit down and you're actually listening to music. Now, you could do this, in the car. I don't know how safe that would be, but you could do it pretty much anywhere. Put some headphones on, all right? Make sure that you can really hear the music well, but then listen to each instrument individually. So listen one time to the song and listen just to the drums. Really try to focus in on what the drummer's playing. Try and visualize, the drummer playing and see it in your mind's eye, okay? And listen to just the drums. Try and phase out everyone else, all right, and listen just to the drummer. Then do this with the bass player. Then do this with the piano player, the guitar player, right, the singer. Just don't listen to the words. Listen to the inflections in the voice. Really listen to the tone of the voice, okay? By doing this, you're going to notice that, wow, you're going to start really hearing things in music that you never actually heard before, okay? And this is part of practice as well, okay? So now, let me talk a little bit about practice, all right? When you practice music, well, first of all, a lot of times you might feel guilty or something because, I didn't get a chance to practice today, and, I only practiced 2 hours, or, I'm not getting better, or I didn't practice this, or it could be, hundreds of different things that are going on in your mind at once. Let me stop that for a second and just tell you, just relax, okay? The best thing is practice as much as you can, all right? But if you miss a day, you miss 2 days, you go on vacation for a week, you have to live your life, because part of making art, be it the piano, the guitar, any instrument, pottery, painting, whatever it is that is your artistic avenue and venture, you have to live life, because living life and experiencing life, going to a nice restaurant and having a nice dinner or a conversation with a friend, going for a walk in the woods, so on and so forth, all of that stuff, okay? That all pulls into your art as well. The name of my group is Katahdin's Edge, and you can find us on the web, jazzontheedge.com. And Katahdin is a mountain in Maine. Now, when I hike that mountain, it is a gorgeous. When you're up there and you see the sky and the depth and just this beautiful mountain, it's like nothing that you've ever seen before, all right? And that makes you feel a certain way. And if you pay attention to those feelings, you can bring them back into your music. So then, okay? Let me give you a perfect example. You've probably fallen in love at some point, all right, and probably had your heart broken, depending on how old you are, okay? Maybe you've had your heart broken several times, all right? But the point is, every time that happens, you love someone, something, and then you get separated from it, and you have this like deep pain, almost, sometimes physical pain, all right? How are you going to be able to sit down and play something that's just like, nice and gentle? How are you going to be able to play something gentle unless you've actually experienced some of that, some of that pain and I guess even suffering, you might even say, at times in your life. Now, I'm not saying that you should go out looking for pain and suffering. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. My point is that don't be afraid to live your life. If you want to go out for a walk or whatnot, don't feel guilty that you have to be stuck in a practice room for 8 hours a day in order to get to a point in which you can actually play music well. You don't have to be stuck in a practice room for 8 hours a day. However, here's the caveat on that, and that is that you do want to practice as much as you can, all right? So the point is, practice as much as you can, all right, but also live your life. Strike a balance between the two so that you have these experiences in your life and you don't let life pass you by, but then you also get the technical stuff, right? When you're listening, you're doing active listening or taking that hike in the woods or whatnot, you could be practicing as well. Sing to yourself, do rhythmic stuff, right? There's a lot of times you can vocalize rhythms and do that kind of stuff, right? Be listening actively to music. Bring an iPod, a Walkman, whatnot, okay? Now, when you are going to practice, it's better for you to practice in a consistent way rather than all at once. And what I mean by that is rather than practicing for 3 hours on Sunday, I'd rather see you practice for 15 minutes a day every day of the week. Consistent practice is going to be better than one big chunk of practice one day a week, okay? So There's a lot of ideas here, right? Now, I also told you that I would tell you where to find some information online, and there'll be some links that are available around this e-lesson. Just look around the video here, and you should see some links, okay? But basically, Google should be your best friend. Go to google.com, and in the search, type in something like free piano theory as 3 different words, free jazz piano, right? You could try that. Jazz piano theory, right? There's a lot of different places online that you can find free information, okay? Also try wikipedia.com, wikipedia.com, and type in jazz or jazz piano or piano theory. You'll find a lot of different stuff there. There's a great online music dictionary at Virginia Tech. So if you went to Google and typed in Virginia Tech, T-E-C-H, music dictionary, 4 separate words, I think it should come up close to the top, right? So as usual, have fun, be patient with yourself, and just keep plugging along. You can definitely do it, right? I've taught hundreds of different students from around the world, and all of them can play, improvise, be musical at some level or another. So I know that you can do it as well, right? You just got to find your own way of doing it, and you got to find your own creative voice. But I have faith in you, so have faith in yourself as well. All right, take care, and if you're interested in more information, take a look at the DVDs, and then also consider a subscription, and you can study with me privately through the internet. Take care. Okay, welcome to the Intermediate Funk Grooves movie. I think that you're really going to like this lesson. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through 4 different funk grooves. Okay, they're not really traditional funk grooves per se. You'll hear them. I think that they sound pretty hip, and what you could do is you could take out certain aspects of each groove. I will put up some more funk movies because I really enjoy playing funk music. But let's just start by listening to what these grooves sound like when you play them with like a clavinet sound. So I'm going to dub this over. I'm just going to listen along with you here. Okay, so here we go. So you can hear that the grooves are really, fun, funky grooves. When you use the clavinet sound, it gives a whole different, feel to the groove than when using a piano. However, I'm going to use the piano because it also sounds cool to use a piano sometimes, even on stage, rather than using the funk sound. You throw in the piano sound. And some of these grooves, like the kind of gospel-y one in letter D, sound really nice on piano as well. Okay, so let's get right into playing these grooves. The first one, letter A, is. Okay, and this basically works all over a C7 kind of sound. Okay, so. And you see what happens is that, it's pulling from that gospel feel, that alternation between the 1 chord and the 4 chord. The C, F, C. See that in there? I kind of like little, get that little suspension in there. Okay. So let me do it nice and slow. All right, and go through each measure here. So the first measure is. So you see that? This is easy, right? So it's right, right, left, right. So I would start just by trying to get that first part of it together. Okay. Now the next measure, let me just do that one. It starts on the upbeat, so it's. So see how I'm just sliding? And try and get that a little bit swinging. It's kind of a light swing. It's not a real heavy swing. All right, so from the top, 3, 4. Okay, let me go through that one more time, nice and slow. So left, left. Okay. And what I would suggest that you do is don't worry about playing in time, okay? If being on a play, if that's a little difficult for you right now, then what I suggest is play out of time. The most important thing is get the right notes at the right time with the right fingers. So even if you do like, oops. Okay. Okay. And you find the fingering that works well for you. You can do the slide if you want, or you can do 2 and 4, right? 2 and 4, 2, 4, or it's a 3 and 5, or just do the slide. You know, slide right into that. Okay. So let me do it again. All right. Now remember in that left hand, like short, short. Let's just do that together, all right? That first measure. Ready, go. Now let's do the second measure together, all right? Ready, go. So it's okay. So I think that's been broken up enough for you, so you'll be able to figure that out. Letter B is a nice, simple alteration to it. You'll notice that it's exactly the same, except for in measure 2, it goes right. So it's going up rather than going down. So you get so let me do that slow. You know that's the same as the first measure from letter A, and then and now, moving into letter C, now using a different chord, using the C7 sharp 9. And like I said, you know, all of this can go over that kind of like C groove, right? Because it's funky, so we're gonna like be pulling between that major, minor, like, you know, sharp 9 kind of sound, okay? So you can get away with that. You can get away with kind of using that major and minor you can do that major and minor kind of sound on that dominant chord. It will sound nice. So this one is, so you see what's happening? It's coming right off of that C7 sharp 9 chord. If you don't know this chord, this is a really nice chord to know. There's your root, your third, your seventh, and your sharp 9. So that's a groove that you can be doing just over that C7 sharp 9 thing. Anyway, let's do this groove. It's and all these grooves you can also do down an octave. Sounds nice. Okay, so let me break this down and do it nice and slow for you. So it's the same rhythm, all right? What I tried to do is I tried to like kind of keep A, B, and C close rhythmically because, well, actually A, B, and C are exactly the same rhythmically. And the reason I did that is I didn't want to make it too much of a stretch in between each one for you, because I want you to see that, taking the same rhythm but making these alterations with the notes, you can get some really unique and different sounds. All right, so don't think that you have to go in and like, oh, now I'm going to change the rhythm, and now I'm going to change the notes, now I'm going to change the chords. No, you can change just one element of it. Right? So and what we're doing here is we're keeping this pretty much the same chord, the same rhythm. We're just changing the notes and the order of the notes in which we're playing. Okay, so it's, you might want to use 5 and 3. Okay, so 5 and 3. You brass that, just so. Remember, I'm just moving my fingers back so you can see which notes I'm playing. All right, and then this is just an arpeggio of that. So it's that chord down there and the chord up there. And I end on the E natural. See how you're going to have to do, you have to do that fingering. 1, 2, 4, because you need your pinky for the E natural. So that's a nice thing to practice as well. Okay, so that whole groove. Okay, now let's move on to letter D. And letter D pulls from this this kind of like this kind of gospel-y triads over the chord. I'll end up talking about that in a gospel lesson. But basically, it's once again this like. See how I'm like pulling from these, like the major and the minor? I'm using these crush notes. Notice that it's not super clean. It can get a little sloppy now. It gets a little bit of dirt in there, and that sounds nice, all right? So, here, let me do this one. So, and what I'm doing here is I'm moving right up this, right, this pentatonic, right? Moving right up this like kind of pentatonic blues kind of scale, right? So that's how I'm just moving. Except this C is down here, and that's going to be a little tricky for you. You're going to get right into that chord. Okay. Now you can use 1, 1, 3, and 5, or 1, 2, and 4, all right, for your fingering. Okay. Now these C's in the left hand are what we kind of call a ghost note. You're just kind of ghosting it. You're not really going to be hitting that C super heavy. So listen to it. So you see how it's just keep going back and forth between the chord. Make sure on that last C it's all right? It's ba-da. It's getting right. Don't don't hold on that, okay? Make sure it's ba-da. Hey, now notice that at the end there, I'm starting to like kind of move around and do some different stuff. And this brings up a good point, and that is that you could take that same rhythm, right? Bon, bon, da, da, ba, da, ba, da, ba, da, ba, da, ba, do, ba, ba, dee, ba, dee, ba, dee, ba. Okay? You take that same rhythm, okay, that you've been doing in A, B, and C. Now, letter D is a different rhythm. So let's just focus on the rhythm in A, B, and C. And put different notes from it, okay? You can use any of the notes from C7, okay? Even, let's say we just do just a basic chord. You want to do some improvising over the funk? You can do, just hit that C7. Or if you wanted to, like get that C7 sharp 9. Okay, so you see how I'm using that, the blues scale, okay? But the thing to remember, all right, the thing to see here, even if you're not catching all the notes and it's like it might be going over your head, that's okay for right now, all right? The thing to really clue into what I'm doing here is I'm taking that same rhythm. Okay, so notice that I'm using the exact same rhythm from A, B, and C, okay, to pull up all of these different options, right? That's important. Remember that you don't have to like come up with something that's all crazy and complicated and different from what you already know. So once you get down A, B, and C, and you can do it along with the band track, right, then you're good to go. Then just start changing it. So instead of going like, instead of going down to that, okay. Okay, so let's see. So there you go. So like I just took that little middle section of the lick and I ended up changing it. Okay. So remember when you go over these grooves and you're playing them over and over again, that's a vamp. Okay, so you're just vamping over this 2-measure groove. Now let me throw on the accompaniment track here. Okay, I'm going to listen to it on my iPod. You can download the MP3 file and play along with it, and I'll sync this up later. Okay, so let me just put this on. 1, 2, 3, 4. B. C. How you can take just that one part and then that chord, C7 sharp 9. So there's a lot of fun and funky things that you can do with these 4 different grooves, right? Remember, you use your imagination. You don't have to stay just with the whole groove. Just take out that one section. Okay, notice how I keep ghosting. Right? That ghost note, all right, it provides a nice counter rhythm to what it is that you're doing in the right hand. Okay, kind of keeps that rhythm going. So try throwing that in there. All right, those 4 grooves, you got a lot that you can work with right there. Now, there is something that I want to tell you about when playing funk, and that is that you have to look and listen for the holes. Okay, so you want to find the holes in what it is that you're playing. And what I mean by that is, the drummer's going to be laying down the bed, okay? And the bass player is going to usually play like a 2-measure, maybe a 4-measure pattern. They're going to usually just keep repeating that over and over and lay it down relatively steady. They might alter it now and again, but they shouldn't be altering it too much, right? So you want to keep this nice steady groove going on, something we call the bubble, all right? And what you want to do is, as also a member of the rhythm section, especially if you're playing like clavinet, is not play too much, right? You might just want to do and you might not even hit that low C or whatever key you're in, if you're in E or D or whatnot, all right? You might not hit that low note. Listen to what the bass player is doing. If the bass player is doing like, okay, then you might cop that along with them, right? So play exactly that same thing. And then see how I altered the pattern? One time I did one thing, the other time I did something else, okay? Remember, space, space, space. Space is the place, okay? So really make sure that you put in a lot of space. Almost all of the time, you're playing too much when you're dealing with funk, okay? So it's always a matter in which you could take more and more and more and more out. So start by just listening to the groove and putting in absolutely nothing, okay? Then just add one little element to it, okay? So what I mean by that is you might just do... Right? C, can you not play that low C and start kind of in the middle of the groove? So You know, could you do something like that? All right. So there's a lot of exercises that you can get out of these 4 different grooves. Okay. So play along with the track. I'll put 2 up there for you. I'll put the 3 up there actually. I'll put the original clavinet one that you heard in the beginning of this. Which, remember, once again, that clavinet stuff, it was just taken right out of these grooves right here, A, B, and C. I didn't throw in D on the clavinet. D would sound good with an electric piano sound, like a Rhodes sound, something like that. So I'll put that track in, and I'll put a slow version of the groove and a slow version of the accompaniment and a faster version of the accompaniment so you can try playing along with it. And of course, make up your own accompaniments. And if you have any questions, check out the users forum and post them there. Talk to you. Okay, hi. This lesson is on fourth voicings, and voicings built on fourths get a really fun and interesting sound. Now, another term for voicings in fourth is quartal voicings. All right. So let's dive right into these voicings. First of all, let's talk about what a fourth is. A fourth is, when I'm talking about a fourth, I'm talking about a perfect fourth. So from C to F is a perfect fourth. To find a perfect fourth, it's the 4th note up of the major scale, or half, whole, minor third, major third, perfect fourth. Okay, so it's up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 notes from the note that you're starting on. So, okay, don't count the note that you're starting on. So to go up a fourth from here, right, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? So those are 2 fourths stacked on top of each other. Okay? And when I refer to fourths, I'm thinking of them starting from the thumb up. Now, some people like to think of them from the top note down. So if I'm in a key of C, I'm thinking of this as fourths built on the 9th, okay, or on the 2nd, right? So here it's built on the D, right? Now, some people might say, oh, that's fourths coming down from the root. Whichever way you prefer, I like to think bottom up. Some people like to think top down, okay? So when I'm talking about fourths built on the 9th in this lesson, I'm thinking, okay, your thumb is going to be on the 9th, and you're going to build 2 fourths on top of that, all right? And it's just going to be 2 fourths, all right? So 1, 2. All right, so let's dig into the 3 basic types of 7th chords, major 7, minor 7, and dominant 7th, and how to play fourth voicings on each of those. All right, now, in the left hand, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with, we'll do this in C, and I'm going to start with just a very simple major 7 shell down here. Okay, so this is C major 7, and what I have here is I have the root, the 3rd, right, and here's my 7th for C major 7. So now what I can do is I can build fourths on the 2nd with a 9, on the 3rd, okay, or on the 6th. Those all sound good on a major 7 chord. So build them on the 2nd, on the 3rd, or on the 6th. All right, so let's just go through those so you can hear them. And now, when building them on the 2nd like this, what you're probably going to want to do is, instead of playing the 7th down here, you're going to want to play the 6th, like that, okay? As you can hear, that's a little bit tense because you have that minor 9th. Minor 9th is just half step higher than an octave, okay? All right, so that's a beautiful voicing right there for major 7. So if you're going to do it in, like, say, E flat, you know, you can throw down your E flat. Okay. It's a nice voicing to use for the beginning of Green Dolphin Street. Oops. You know? So it's E flat major 7. So here, going back to C major 7, okay? Root 3rd, 6th, which is replacing the 7th, 9, the 5, and the roots. Now the other one that you can do is built on the 3rd. Okay? And the last one is built on the 6th. Right? Now you'll notice that when you're building them on the 6th like this, wow, man, it's like you get these notes down here and these notes up here, and it seems like you get a lot of space. Well, see what you can do? You can just move up just like that. can do something like that. See how I'm just moving that? Okay. Now, you can also just come down from the top in fourths. See that? See how that's another way of looking at it. So I'm coming right down from my root, all in fourths. And if you had a bass player playing a C, you get that sound. Okay. Or you can do. You see that? So it's all down in fourths. Now what happens if I do it from here? There's a great voicing right there. Now if you're lucky enough to be able to hit that, then you could do that, but most people are not going to be able to hit that. So this is where you could throw down a root 5, put your pedal down, and then hit your fourth voicing. Now you might be wondering, well, why can't you do fourths on, like, say, on the 11th or on the 5th there, right? Well, I mean, you'll notice what happens if you play it on the 11th. If you build fourths, you end up getting the flat 7th and the flat 3rd. So now that's going to work for minor, but it's not going to work for major. And then built on the 5th, well, you end up having, these are all fine, but once you get over here, you end up having the natural 4th, which is, once again, going to sound weird on that 3rd. However, there is another one that you can do that adds some tension to the chord voicing. Do you know what it is? Think about it. Right? Here's a 4th voicing, and this is your sharp 11, okay? So the F sharp is sharp 11 on C, and then you have the 7th and the 3rd. All right? There's a nice chord voicing right there. Remember, I'm moving my fingers just so you can see. It's actually more comfortable for me to obviously just play it like this. So that's a nice chord. Also, you can end down if you want to get a little bit of tension. So you see what I'm doing? I'm just arpeggiating right up that 4th. Okay, so F sharp, B, E, F sharp, B, E, F sharp, B, E. Okay. All right, so now let's move on to minor. Minor, built on the root sounds great. Built on the 9th once again sounds great. Built on the 4th or the 11th sounds great. Built on the 5th sounds great. If it's a minor 6 chord, you can build it on the 6, right? So you see here once again. And then these fourths, you can also use these for your improvisation. So a lot of times, you've probably heard McCoy Tyner and stuff. Okay, so you see what I'm doing is I hit a root and a 5th, C and a G, and then I can use these different fourths down here, okay? And it gives it an ambiguous sound because I'm not like just, hitting like minor 7 all the time. I have this, there's definitely a minor sound. You get your flat 3rd in there. So if you want something that you can practice, this sounds great over the minor. Of course, you can do it over the major and over the dominant as well. But there's a nice practice for you. So this is natural minor, right, on C. Let me slow it down for you. C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C. It's the same thing as your E flat major scale, okay, starting on C. Right, and you can just creep right up those fourth voicings. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? And then once you get adept at that, then Okay, so that's minor chord voicings. Now, once again, you can build down from the top, right? So this is there's a real nice sound for C minor 6. And if that's too big of a stretch for you, you don't necessarily have to play that all at one time. You could do something like that as an ending, right? Right? Or you can just arpeggiate it, all right? And that's a nice sound as well. Now, for dominant sevenths, you can build the fourths on pretty much any of the chromatic notes from the scale. All right, let me demonstrate. If I do this for C7, it's not going to work that well. All right, but if it was a sus sound, this works nicely. Okay, because I have the sus4. All right, so that one isn't going to work all that great. All right, so you can take that one off. That's not going to work all that great either because I have a B natural. However, built on a ninth sounds great. And this gives me 9/5 and roots. Built on the sharp 9 sounds nice. Okay, so it's sharp 9, flat 13, flat 9. Okay. Right, and it would sound nice if you probably let the bass player take care of the root there. Built on the third sounds great. Okay. That's a real nice clean sound. That's just 3, 13, and 9. Okay. All right, once again, built on the 4 is not going to sound all that great unless it's a sus kind of sound. Okay. But then again, you have to contend with the flat third up here. So once again, so far we have built on the ninth, built on the sharp 9, built on the third. Those all sound nice. Okay. Built on the sharp 11 is not going to sound good because of the B natural. However, built on the fifth is going to sound decent. However, once again, you have that sus4 up here. Okay. So you would have to do something like this in the left hand. You wouldn't want to do the third. You want to do the sus4. Okay. Built on the sharp 5 is going to sound nice. All right. So that's a real nice sound. This is basically a flat 9, flat 13, sharp 11. Okay, so these two are really nice for that altered sound on that dominant seventh chord. This is built on the sharp 9, and it gives you, once again, sharp 9, flat 13, flat 9. Built on the flat 13 here, sharp 5. Right? You end up getting flat 13, flat 9, sharp 11. Built on the 13 sounds great. Okay, that's 13, 9, and 5. Built on the flat 7 sounds nice as well. This is flat 7, sharp 9, flat 13. Okay. And then once again, obviously built on the natural 7th isn't going to sound good because that's going to give you a major sound. Okay, so let's just go through those again. Built on the 9, let me do the ones that are not so tense first. So built on the 9th, built on the 3rd, built on the 13th. Those are all nice sounding fourth voicings over a dominant 7th, and they don't sound too tense, right? Okay, all real nice sounds there. Okay, so if you're playing a blues, go to F7. See that? There's my F7. That's the 7th. That's the 3rd. 13, 9, and 5. Okay. Back to C7. So once again, the ones that sound, relatively less tense are the ones built on the 9th, fourths built on the 3rd, and fourths built on the 13. Okay. Notice I'm not saying 6 because it's a dominant 7th chord. We would call that a 13. All right. Now the ones that sound a little bit more tense are the ones that are built on the sharp 9, right? The ones that are built on the flat 13, and the one that's built on the flat 7. So, it's kind of a nice funk sound as well. so that's built on the sharp 9, built on the flat 13. Notice what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my third up here to keep the voicing closer, and then this is built on flat 7. Right? So there's 3 that are not so tense, and there's 3 that are very tense. And then you have the ones built on the root, on the 4th, and then on the 5th. The ones built on the root, the 4th, and the 5th are a sus kind of sound. So if you were to... Okay? And then obviously the one on the root and the one on the 5th is a real straight sus sound because you have 5 root and sus 4, and here you have root, sus 4, and flat 7. Obviously, if you build it on the 4 like this, the 11, right, you'll notice that you end up having the flat 3rd up there. So it's kind of, you can get away with it, but it's not a true sus sound. And then obviously the ones on the sharp 9 and on the sharp 11 don't work all that well because you have the major 7 in there. Okay. Now, what I like to do as well is when I'm improvising over so say I have C7, I have here's a C7 chord. I might even take out the 13th, just end up doing the 3, 7, 9. Oops. So you see, here I can get away with using any of these 4ths, even the ones like... So here this is a blues, and I'm kind of messing around with these 4ths and stuff. Okay? And I'm just moving and creating lines using those 4ths. Another thing I like to do is do them hands together, right, and create lines that way. If you listen to my group, Katahdin's Edge, you'll end up hearing me do that kind of stuff with the group. Now, that brings up a good point, is that, I just told you before that, this doesn't sound good on a dominant 7th, okay? Now, sure, if I'm playing a straight dominant 7th chord, it's not going to sound good. But however, when I start to use these 4ths as improvisation, they take on a new type of function. Now it's a passing tone. So even though it's tense, the tension is resolved shortly after. Okay. Unfortunately, there's not enough time in this segment for me to go through all these different, 4th improvisation. But one thing I would suggest that you practice, and I used to do this a lot myself, and I still sometimes do it as a warm-up, it's just... See how I'm just going up each 4th? And then, you can... Oops. So this one goes up while the other one goes down, while the right hand goes down, left hand goes up, right hand goes down. You could separate them by one whole step. Oops. And if you think about what that voicing is this is kind of like another sus voicing right here. You can also kind of use that for a minor sound as well, even though there's no minor 3rd in there, right? You can kind of imply it. Or if you wanted to, you could throw it in there, okay? You can also just... So just create lines just using those 4ths. And notice I'm just staying within 1/4. I'm not thinking I'm not thinking, I got to go up to the next 4th. Just 4th and 4th. 2 4ths on top of one another. Okay? And then I can do the same line, or I could... I can kind of incorporate that into your practice routine, all right? So, but what I would say is just start with that basic, right? And then try going opposite, okay? And then you can do... I mean, sky is really the limit, you know. Just you're only limited by your own imagination as to what it is that you can do with that. So that's fourth voicings. It doesn't take too much else to start to think, okay, well, if I wanted to do, like, say, D minor 7 flat 5, well, you know, certain ones are going to sound good and others are not going to sound as good, okay? So you can start to just kind of, like, dissect what the fourth is, all right? So, you know, which ones are going to sound good? Well, okay, obviously, you know, built on the ninth here for D minor 7 flat 5 isn't going to sound great because you have this, you know, natural 5. Now, could you move it down to there? Well, sure. It's not a true fourth anymore, okay? But it's all right, all right? So the point is that taking, you know, if you build on those three chords, the major 7, the minor 7, the dominant 7th, and you really get to know them very well, then you'll be able to pull these fourth ideas into your other chord voicings. So have fun. Okay, in this lesson I'm going to talk about the altered scale and the Lydian flat 7 scale. And I'm going to use a 2-5-1 as a demonstration tool for you. Now I'm going to talk about some things that might be a little bit advanced. There are some other lessons that will explain secondary dominance, that kind of stuff. So if you don't understand what I'm talking about, if some of this is too advanced, then I suggest you check out some of those other lessons. Let's start with a basic 2-5-1 in the key of C. Okay, so we have D minor 7, G7, C major 7. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make that into chord shells. Okay, for right now, just root 7, root 3, root 7. And then to improvise over this 2-5-1, I can use Dorian, Mixolydian, and then Ionian. But in reality, all that's going on is I'm just using my C major scale over the entire... I'm using my C major scale over the entire 2-5-1 progression. All right. Now let's talk about the altered scale. So basically, just to wrap that up, that you know, when you're improvising over a 2-5-1, you can use your major scale to improvise over all three of the chords. If I'm going to do G minor 7 to C major 7 to F major 7, so G minor 7 to C7 to F major 7, I can use. Okay, you might want to bring it up an octave. That's just all the notes from the F major scale. All right, so back to D minor 7, G7, C major 7 here. On the G7 chord, I can use what's called my altered scale. All right, and how you make your altered scale is, if we're going to make a G altered scale, go up a half step. All right, so it'd be A flat, and make a melodic minor scale. All right, melodic minor ascending scale. Right, on that note, so on A flat. Okay, so think of it this way. You start on G, it's a G7 scale, right? I'm sorry, it's a G7 chord. Go up a half step, play a major scale on that note, all right? So here's A flat major, flat the third, that just made it melodic minor, okay, and then start it on G. And go from G to G. Now, another way of thinking about this is how does it relate to a G major scale? And if you thought about it in relation to a G major scale, it's the root, flat 9, flat third, natural third, sharp 4, sharp 5, flat 7, and then the root. You can also think of this as, root, flat 2, flat 3, flat 4 or 3, okay, whatever is easier for you to think of. You can also think of this as flat 5, flat 13, okay, flat 7, and then the root. So let me do a couple more of them for you. Let's say I'm going to do D7. So once again, half step up from D is E flat. If I made an E flat major scale, right, and then I flatted the 3rd, and I started it on D. Now you might be wondering, how do you know what fingering to use on these different scales? Well, look what happens. I wouldn't obviously want to do that, right? I know that some people out there have probably tried doing that, and you can kind of get it to work, but it doesn't feel all that comfortable. You want to try and avoid, when you're playing scales, putting a thumb or a pinky on any of the black notes. So, okay, this obviously doesn't work, right? But now if I get my thumb here, right, that works nicely. Okay, so I can get like that, and then get up to my 2nd finger. Oh, okay, so that's how I do it. So the scale, you have to start it on your 2nd finger. By going through and learning all your 12 major scales, it will help you be able to work on the different types of scales like Lydian flat 7 and altered and stuff. Another way of considering it is, you know, how would you play your E flat major scale? You start it with your middle finger, right? So all I'm doing is, okay, so it's pretty much like the same fingering as the E flat major scale. Okay, so anyways, that's D7, right? That's D altered. All right. So one more. If I wanted to do F altered, go up a half step. It's G flat major, right? And then I would flat the 3rd, right? And then start on F. Altered is a real nice sound, and it sounds really good when you link it up with this type of a chord. This chord, you know, this is on C7. This is just the 3rd and the 7th, the guide tones, and then either the sharp 9 or the flat 9. And then check that out. Okay. So, getting back to the 2-5-1 in the key of C here, right? So I can use my D Dorian scale here, and then when I get to G7, right? Hear that sound? That sound gives you a very, you know, real jazzy, altered sound right away, even though I'm just playing the root and the 3rd down here. And then I go to my major 7. Now, if you haven't checked out the lesson on chordal voicings, 4th voicings, all right, you can check that out, and you can use those as well. So like, so you see here, I'm using this for D minor 7, so, and then when I go to G7, I can do that, right? I could also do that as well, right? That would, actually no, it wouldn't work as well. This works nicely, okay? Even though there's no 3rd in there, that's okay. If you wanted to, add the 3rd, and there's a nice altered sound. And then here I do 4ths built on the 3rd for C major 7, okay? And just do the C major scale. All right. Now, let's talk about Lydian flat 7, all right? Lydian flat 7 works best when you do a sub 5, okay? So rather than doing 2, 5, well, let me do it in root position, 2, 5, 1, like that, D minor 7, G7, C major 7, you could do a 2 substitute 5, right, which is a sub 5, to 1. Now, a substitute 5 is also what we call a tritone resolution, all right, or a tritone substitution, all right. So the tritone is a flatted 5th, right, or you can also think of it as halfway in the octave. So instead of playing G, I play its tritone, all right, which is D flat, Still the same kind of chord. It's still a D flat. It's still a dominant 7th chord. All right. And I replace the G7 with that D flat dominant 7th chord. Okay. So. And then what I do is I play my Lydian flat 7 scale on that substitute dominant chord, all right, on that tritone substitution. And the Lydian flat 7 scale is your major scale, right? So here's D flat major scale, right? And then what I do is I sharp the 4, okay, and I flat the 7th. Now I'm going to show you something that's really neat here in 1 second, but so here's D minor 7. Right? And then D flat, Lydian flat 7, and then C major 7. Now, let me just mush down these notes here for a second, right? Right? Do they look familiar to you at all? What if I were to take these 3 notes and bring them up here, right? You see what I have? It's the same exact notes as that G altered, right? So now think about this for a second. I had G7, right? And I could play that G altered scale, right? And I said that I could replace that G7 chord with its tritone substitution, right? Which is D flat. And then on the D flat, I would use Lydian flat 7, right? But they're exactly the same notes. Lydian flat 7 and D flat, Lydian flat 7, and G altered are exactly the same notes. All right, they all come from that same melodic minor sound. Okay, so really all you need to do is know 1 chord, and a great way of you just need to know 1 scale. And a great way of practicing this is, do D minor 7, G altered. Right? And then so let me do it in the key of F for a second for you. So I start with G minor. Okay, and remember that I'm playing my F major scale starting on G. And when I go to C7, I do my C altered scale. And then go to F major. Or I could do, right, there's my G minor again. And then I can go down to G flat dominant 7th, right? Because G flat is the tritone for C. I'm just replacing the C, okay? But now once again, remember it's still that same scale. It's just starting now on G flat. Okay. And then when you get to the major 7, if you wanted to, you could play it as Lydian. So once again, here it is in C. That's a great dominant 7th chord voicing, right, for that altered. It's the 7th, 3rd, sharp 9, flat 13. Okay. So hopefully that will help explain and help you understand the altered scale and the Lydian flat 7 scale. I might end up doing some more videos on that because there's a lot of cool things that you can do with that scale. Remember though that altered and Lydian flat 7 is exactly the same scale. Okay, so make sure that you understand that tritone substitution because that's going to help make a lot of sense out of those 2 scales as well for you. So practice hard. Welcome to the basic harmonization lesson. In this lesson, what I'm going to talk about and what I'm going to teach you is how to take a simple melody and be able to put chords to it. A lot of times, people wonder, well, what chords do I end up putting to a melody? Well, we're going to start answering some of those questions in this lesson. there's a handout that goes along with this lesson, so make sure you download it, the PDF file, and print it out for yourself. In this first page, you'll see in the top left here is written out the C major scale. Okay, and the C major scale is okay. Now, if we were to take that C major scale and we number the notes, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then this you might say is 8, but we call it 1 because it's the same note as C down here. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Right? Now, we can build chords on each note of the scale, all right, using just notes of the scale, and that's what we call our diatonic chords. And I talk about that in some other lessons, okay? But the 3 chords that I want to focus on is I want to focus on the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord. So 1, 4, and 5, right? So the C chord, the F chord, and then the G chord, right? You notice that it's C, E, G, F, A, C, G, B, D, okay? And then obviously you can do these 1, 4, and 5 chords in other keys as well. Just quickly, if I were to play the key of G, the 1 chord would be G, the 4 chord would be C, the 5 chord would be D. Notice that I have the F sharp there. Okay, so back to the key of C. C, F, and G is the 1, 4, and 5 chord. Now, you'll notice that each note from the scale is represented in this 1, 4, and 5 chord, all right? So we have C, E, and G there, okay? So if I play the notes from the scale, I have F, right? I also have A, right? And then once I get to the G chord, I have G, which I already have. I have B, and I have D. So you see that I get all of my notes from the scale by just using the 1, 4, and 5 chord, which in the key of C is C, F, and G. Okay, now don't get discouraged by the folk songs. Okay, folk songs are great because they just provide a very simple melody in which we can focus on coming up with some harmonization, right, and putting chords to these melodies. All right, so obviously, you know, you can end up taking these concepts and putting them to any song, but the folk songs are a nice place to start because they're a lot easier, and most people know a lot of these folk songs anyway, so you don't have to read too much in the melody. We can focus on the chords. Okay, so if we take a look at the first song here, Hot Cross Buns, real common kids folk song, real simple, right? And it's just okay. Now, you notice that the melody has a rhythm to it. So the melody's rhythm is da da da. Okay. Now, there's also a rhythm to the chords. Now, let me pause for a second. When we put chords to a melody, we call that harmonizing the melody. So, all that harmonizing a melody means is that you're putting chords to that melody. Right? So, rather than the melody being naked and just being played by itself, you're going to put some chords down here in the left hand. When we play those chords, we call that creating an accompaniment for the melody, all right? So harmonizing a melody means that we put chords to that melody. Now, I just told you that there is a rhythm to the melody. So there's a melodic rhythm. There's a rhythm that the melody has. And there's also a rhythm to the harmony, which means that there is a rhythm to the, you guessed it, to the chords, right? And there's a lot of common rhythmic patterns. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a couple of them right now. So, and I will put this as a scan up online as well so you can grab these. The first one is to just do a whole note, all right? So you do a whole note for the entire measure. So just hold the chord down for 4 beats, all right? Now, these are all 4/4 time, okay, because you notice that we're focusing on 4/4 time for right now, all right? Obviously, the harmonic rhythm would be different if it were 3/4 time or 2/4 time. Okay, but we're going to focus on 4/4. So here's one type of harmonic rhythm, just using a whole note. Okay, or we could do this one. Right, and that's 2 half notes. So 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Another one we could do is That one where we have quarter, quarter, half note. Okay, so something like this. 1, 2, right? Or another one that we could do would be quarter note, quarter note, quarter note, quarter note, right? Just like that, right? So that would be 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, that one is not going to be as common because that's a lot of chords to be playing, all right? To be playing a chord on every beat, that's going to be a lot of chord work. Now, within every measure, right, there is strong beats and there are weak beats, okay? Now, beats 1 and 3 are strong beats, okay? So let me circle those for you here, all right? So beat 1 and 3 are strong beats, okay? Beat 1 is the strongest beat of all, okay? So when you hit beat 1, that's a real strong beat, whereas beat 3 is a little bit weaker, okay? Beats 2 and 4 are weak beats, okay? So 1 and 3 are strong beats, beats 2 and 4 are weaker beats. Now the reason that means something is that when we're trying to put chords to a melody, all right, we want to focus on these strong beats because when we hit a strong beat, we want the melodic note, the note from the melody, to also be a note that's found in the chord. Now, does it always have to be that way? Well, of course not. There are times that you'll find exceptions to the rule. But for right now, if you're looking at this video, I'm assuming that you need some help with some basic reharmonization. So you're best to start with this basic concept first, that when you have a strong beat, you're going to make sure that that melody note is also found in the chord. So if we take a look at this first measure here, you see that the note is an E, right? And then what we could do is we could figure out, well, what chord, C, F, or G, 1, 4, or 5, which chord has E in it? Well, C has one in it, and then that's pretty much it, okay? So I'm going to do my melody up here, okay? See, I can do that, so that sounds nice. Now what I'm doing is I'm doing this harmonic rhythm where I just hold it out for the entire measure. So what I can do is I could write a 1 up there, okay? I can put a 1 up there, and I know that that's going to be my C chord, right? Let me grab a pencil. It's usually good to write in pencil rather than in pen because that way then you can erase stuff, all right? So, now the next measure, same thing, so. Now, if I'm going to play the chord in the next measure, the same chord, I can make this symbol, right? Which is just this, I'll draw it in a marker here so you can see it. It's this line with 2 dots, right? And that means that you just play exactly the same chord that you just did in the previous measure. The same chord or the same set of chords, all right? So you'll notice as we go along, we're going to add on some other chords, so that would still mean that you play the same chords in that next measure. All right, so now if we go to measure 3, we have... Now, right here in the first part of the measure, right, beats 1 and 2, well, yeah, what do you think we're going to put here? Could we put C? Yeah, that would sound nice. Now, what other chord has a C in it? An F chord, right? 4 chord, right? So we could try that. Now, what about when we get to the D? What's going to sound good there? Well, the C chord's not going to sound good there. Listen to what happens if I do that. Doesn't sound all that good. It's because that the note D is not found anywhere in this C chord. Now, where is it found? Oh, it's found in the G chord, right? So now what if I did that? Yeah, that sounds nice. And now when I get to the last measure there, once again I have... Now I said that in measure 3, I might be able to get away with playing an F chord there instead. Well, let's see how that sounds. So it would be... Yeah, that's not too bad. Let me try the whole thing, and I'll try putting in the F in. Okay, so it'd be... That doesn't sound all that bad. Now what if we, instead of doing the F, we did the C? So it'd be... Yeah, that sounds a little bit better maybe, okay? The F doesn't sound bad, all right? The F works, definitely, but the C sounds like it's probably more meant to be a C than an F, all right? So what we could do is we could put our chords in here. We have 1, and then we have a 5, and then we go back to a 1. Okay? So right there we were able to harmonize this melody using just 3 chords, 1, 4, and 5. Okay, now what if we did a different harmonic rhythm? And I'm going to look at this third harmonic rhythm down here, okay, which is quarter note, half note. So, right, and it's not always going to be the same chord. We can change the chord. Right? So if we look at our first measure here, we had... Now what if we do something different on that second note, all right, on the D? Well, what would work? F isn't going to work because D is not found in the F chord. However, it is found in the G chord. So what if we did? Now, once we get back to C, we're not going to want to stay on the G chord, right? Because, well, there's no C in the G chord. So that sounds nice. So it's 1, 5, 1. Now, what else could we do? You might be thinking, well, what about the 4 chord? Well, let's try it. That sounds kind of interesting. 1, 5, 4, 1, 5, 4. All right, but I'm going to go and do 1, 5, 1. Okay, I'm going to do that down here as well. 1, 5, 1. All right, so this song we're able to harmonize the melody, which means put chords to the melody, using just the 1 chord, the 5 chord, and the 1 chord. Okay, now last thing I want to do is talk about the way we move that chord. Now, going from the C to the G like that is not all that, all that slick. It's, kind of like having to move your hand all over the place like that. This is a good place to use an inversion. All right. So if you need help with inversions, check out some of the other lessons. I'll talk about inversions. But basically, an inversion is when you take your chord, right, and you rearrange the notes. So it could be C, G, C. Okay, so you see that I didn't have to move my hand that much. All right, I was able to stay pretty much right there. Okay, and move between those 2 chords. All right. Now, on the second sheet, you'll notice that you have 3 more songs: "Row, Row, Row Your Boat," "Three Blind Mice," and "Old MacDonald." If we take a quick look at "Row, Row, Row Your Boat," you see you have row, row. All right, well, what would make sense here? Once again, it's in the key of C, so, I mean, could you start with the F chord? Yeah, I guess you kind of could get away with it, but obviously what sounds good is... All right? And I simplified the rhythm here. Okay? Now, one of my students was wondering, well, what if we did... Okay, so like once you get to the D, right, go to the G, right, and go back to the C. You could do that, but it doesn't sound all that good because that harmonic rhythm is moving around too much. Remember, think simple with the harmonic rhythm. So if you wanted to do just quarter notes, okay, I would say that's about as complicated as you want to get for right now. If you did something like this, it sounds a little quick, doesn't it? So I would stay on the C chord for the whole thing. Now, what about for the whole first measure, rather? Now, for the second measure, right, should still be the C chord, right? Because the melody note is E, and that's in the C chord. Now, what about when you get to the G here? Should you stay on the C chord? You most certainly could, but you could also go to what? Right? To the G. So it'd be... Okay, and then try figuring out the chords for the rest of the songs there. And if you need help, fill it out a request in the forum, And if need be, I'll do another video and harmonize the rest of the songs for you. But I think that you have the basic concepts now in which you'll be able to figure it out on your own. Okay. Remember, just 1, 4, and 5 chords. Okay. And then keep a very simple harmonic rhythm. Just stay using the 4 different rhythms that I wrote out here. I'm also going to scan this page for you so you can see the notes that I wrote out during this lesson. Okay. So have fun.